Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 12 o'clock department head budget presentation meeting of May 19th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kaur. Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Coman.
Here.
Councilmember Bashir Tosh.
Here.
Thank you. And in that, we do not have any members from the public here. I'm going to skip over the public statements. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Reports item 3A, fiscal year 2025 department budget presentation, budget workshop number 2.
Thank you. And Councilmember Arias now is here, 1204. City Manager Clegg.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. We will provide the next series of department presentations today, and then we'll have some summary slides and conversation at the end. But we'll tee it off with our Human Resources Department presentation, Director Christy Tenter.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Go. Council members, Christy Tenter, Human Resources Director, presenting the fiscal 25-26 budget for the Human Resources Department. And slides that you're all familiar with from our streamlined presentation process. Highlights of our first slide, inclusive of our budget, proposed budget for 25-26 is $3.2 million. That's a 2.58% increase. We'll walk through a few of the highlights of our operations and goals that are supported by these budget allocations, but primary increases are much of what you've heard from colleagues in terms of personnel services. So with benefit increases and routine staffing adjustments, the largest impact is to our personnel. We'll talk about headcount in a moment as well. Operations, Human Resources is a support service for the operations, and the majority of dollars are spent, over 80% are allocated to compliance measures. We'll talk through some of those compliance measures, but ultimately hiring processes that are required during our various outcomes, so pre-employment aspects, et cetera. So again, seeing some of those service fees increase and responding to those by a slight 0.8% budget. We do have one capital improvement item listed for $40,000. Again, part of a process improvement of software that assists with our police and fire. This is specific to fire, but our background checks, which are quite extensive, and always looking for opportunities to reduce those timelines overall. So with that, I will move to our next slide to talk about a few of the goals and accomplishments and what the Human Resources Department budget supports for the agency. So as already mentioned, there's no new requests, so we have maintained or had minimal changes. Some of those are decreases, also some increases to operating costs. The main drivers of the personnel cost increase are salary and benefits, and then technology rental rates for the equipment that we have in our department. When we look at our program or department highlights, really, it's the essence of what Human Resources provides citywide. And so when we start, we look at our recruitment activity. That's our largest contributing factor to the organization. Over 15,000 applications year to date have been received. 220 recruitments completed. We have onboarded at this time, or as of the end of April, start of May, 177 new hires, including 42 trainees and 7 academy graduates. I say that we're the shoestrings on the boots when it comes to our police academies. So we lace it all up. We start with advertising, marketing, the campaign for recruitment. We have ran 9 since Measure N, 1 in progress. As of year to date, we have 1 academy completed and 1 in progress. We can't wait for them to graduate and hit the patrol. But we also are moving forward, and we have another batch in progress right now, ready to start a July academy for our police department. So we are the closest to having our complement. And just a great collaboration, and very proud of all the efforts by our staff to move that process along. It's a very highly regulated and overly complicated process at times, but many factors that go into it. Again, the ESOF that we'll talk about in terms of every opportunity we have to try to reduce that and move applicants through the process and engage them are critically important to us. We also support all the temporary hiring programs. So you'll hear about temporary labor, especially from our recreation and parks. So as they gear up those pools to start in just a couple weeks, it is a mad dash to have pre-employment processes completed. We, year to date, have onboarded 77 temporary employees, typically have over 200 at the peak of the season to support all of our seasonal operations. And so again, making sure they all have the appropriate compliance measures met with their life scans, their pre-employment, their onboarding, their training. Human Resources, again, is kicking off that process in support of the department. When we talk about process improvement, how are the ways that HR can impact the overall organization? We talk about recruitment and recruitment activity. The Society for Human Resources reports that an average hiring for a private sector entity is roughly 39 days. They also report that the average for a public sector is 119 days. Our HR non-sworn is right around 63 days. So we're feeling very comfortable that we're exceeding those national averages of local and state and federal employees. And again, looking for every opportunity to streamline and have people doing the work to serve our communities. But with that, we look at how do we improve through technology. So we have implemented our applicant tracking system where people apply, NeoGov, and started to use more of their modules. So this year using e-forms to automate workflows, get rid of those paper processes that slow us down, make sure that Technology Services has good information on who our employees are in Active Directory. How do we get new hires to onboard and get all of their fast pre-employment processes completed online is really critical. The ESOF information that we have brought on board in the last 2 years with police and now more recently with fire. Again, the complexity of doing a sworn background check and ensuring compliance with the Department of Justice is vast. But having this automated system that can resource and talk to other agencies so we don't have to do as much on-site travel or obtaining documents has been proven to be quite beneficial. And again, another step in reducing how can we move people through the pipeline and get them onboarded at the organization. We've also looked at how do we have new systems for training individuals, so automated online. So how can we bring resources in without sending people out and removing them from the job? So NeoGov has Learn, and we're building out new hire tracks to make sure that we have compliance with our DOJ stipulated agreement processes and other regulatory training like the annual harassment training or our workplace violence program. So again, looking for ways that we can automate that more effectively and consistently through the organization. We also have implemented this past year a GovInvest costing module to assist us in decision making when it comes to personnel decisions or labor matters. So working to upload data and have more real-time information or more accurate budget information when looking at what our asks translate to financially. When we talk about regulatory and policy compliance, I've already touched on several of those. We work in an atmosphere with the types of employees that have compliance measures. So we talked about police hiring, sworn position hiring, lifeguards, the compliance that is required to protect our citizens and our employees. But we also have 340 DOT drivers, and HR administers all of the annual compliance with the Department of Transportation in terms of random drug screens, compliance with the clearinghouse, reporting incidents and accidents and things of that nature. We also are a key contributor to the stipulated judgment with the Bakersfield Police Department. And so the DOJ with Jensen Hughes has created a platform and there's a recruitment section. And so HR has bi-weekly meetings with the vendor to talk about those measures, move them forward. We're happy that I think I was one of the first. Chief's not here to correct me, so I think we were one of the first in receiving a full effective compliance in one of those measures. We've submitted a second measure, and we have an item going to the CAP, the Citizen Advisory Panel, this summer. So again, allocating a lot of unanticipated time to a program, but supporting the Bakersfield Police Department in their efforts. Compliance also talks about day-to-day activities such as regulatory leaves of absence. At any one time, we process over 237 applications for leave of absence for regulatory matters. We process all the medical, vision, dental changes, over 500 with the last open enrollment. We administer those programs, and we have general compliance with compensation and our MOUs, meeting with our labor partners, our 3 groups, regularly to talk about working conditions, salary, and wages. Last, we talk about labor relations. It's really labor and employee relations. So in terms of the services that we provide, we administer or board or secretary of the board for our 3 civil service, something that's not as common. Most agencies only have 1. We have 3 for police, fire, and miscellaneous. So monthly meetings or agendas for our recruitment activities to talk to our board. And we are part of all department investigations, disciplinary matters, appeal hearings, all within the human resources function. We also like to dabble in wellness. We've tried many platforms, speaking to maybe one individual specifically, we've tried many platforms, but with such a varied workforce and logistically spread out, it's difficult to find a one-size-fits-all. But we're happy to report that we've been partnering more actively with Blue Zones, and City Hall North is just so close to being certified as a Blue Zones recipient and partner. And then from there, we look to expand that program out and have more opportunities using their technology and their app and really providing that community connection with our employees internally. So we still try. And then, of course, training development and additional, we have monthly sessions with our providers for work-life balance sessions where employees can go to them, learn soft skills, but also learn how to balance different skill sets personally in life. And so we provide those on a monthly basis in addition to other opportunities for skills and development. So that is some of the highlights of the program aspects that we've been participating in year to date and where we continue to invest our focus for supporting the departments effectively and efficiently. We are small and mighty for all that we do. We have 17 employees allocated to human resources. 3 are particularly focused in some form of benefit administration, which includes retiree and active medical, vision, and dental plans and supplemental plan, enrollment, life changes, leave of absence, American with Disabilities Act considerations for those programs. The rest are in what we'll call HR administration, tied to other activities, including the recruitment activities and training development, and then our labor pieces as well. When we look again to the kind of more global provider, the Society for Human Resources, they indicate typically a staffed HR department is usually a 1-to-100 ratio or 1.5-to-100 ratio. So again, under those averages and still providing a great number of services for our organization. No personnel changes are being requested. And with that, I will close and provide any questions or other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tinter. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Tinter. Always amazing, all the work you do, and
great team.
regulatory hurdles that you jump through. And I appreciate working with the Blue Zones. I think that's a great idea to try and work with a community advocate that we're also working with in other ways. So great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you're the greatest. I really appreciate everything you guys do over there in HR. I know there's a lot of moving parts in HR, but I wanted to ask you if you've considered outsourcing some of these tasks. And specifically in the conversation you mentioned, you mentioned at least 4 areas where it seems to me that tasks that could be outsourced. One is the management of the temps, for the summer programs. The other one was the DOT stuff, because I know there's companies that do all that. The benefits, and then the background checks that we're doing for BPD. Have we looked at whether those can be outsourced?
Councilmember Coben, thank you. And what I would say is there have been some pieces of that that have been. So when we talk about the benefit changes, we have looked at, we have already outsourced our COBRA administration. So when someone separates or how does the status change, that has been outsourced. And we have attempted to outsource our billing for our retiree due to not having internal systems that can support. It was a rocky start with the retirees especially. The COBRA seems to be going well. The benefit administration, cost benefit analysis. And so some of the programs we have looked at about how we would do the changes. And so status changes. Again, those systems for the volume traditionally have not supported a cost-effective change. And there's a change management aspect that goes with it. So it's a culture aspect, which we're not opposed to doing. But again, ongoing review to see where that break-even point is from a cost-benefit factor. So there are opportunities to continue to look at what pieces. But again, the technology is expensive, and having it integrate with our systems created inefficiencies. So as you ask for someone to maybe process a change, it still has to make it into our payroll and be processed in. And that's where some of the disjointed communication and some unclean aspects of that transition would be present. So again, I don't think that's a no. We can continue to assess, but historically, when we have looked at that, it hasn't been as easy as just finding a vendor. The temps. So the temps, yes, there are a lot of temp agencies. Temp agencies provide usually markups on our salary levels. And so again, looking at where the cost benefit analysis is, and then where do we still have to provide the pickup. And so when you have temps that are working with children, there's regulatory environments or regulatory requirements that must be met in terms of LifeScan fingerprints. So we do that in-house. Background checks, things of that nature. And so where we start and stop that process, again, has been easier. We source applicants fairly well for temporary positions. Usually we look at a third-party agency when we're struggling in that aspect. But again, we get them in, we're doing their paperwork. We still have an onus for a lot of their schedules and other things that we need in our systems. So again, I would have to defer to Recreation and Parks a little more on how that process would work. But again, with the markup, a lot of temp agencies are 20 to 40% markup on a rate. And at the volume that we're doing, I think we have a pretty good science in terms of moving them through. But again, can continue to assess that. DOT, we have not looked at that. Part of that is our growth in that area. So when you look at the positions that we have added over the years and where that group is going, there could be a benefit to potentially looking at that for compliance. But we do have our random sourcing that is done by our local physician who tells us who to random, and then we send the people in. But we have made some changes with vendors for cost effective and efficiency in the last 2 years to help with that, and can continue to look at those. But again, cost balance of what a system or a vendor provides in terms of the staff allocation. So I have one person that maybe spends, 10 to 15% of their time each month. Here's the randoms, input this in the system. And we're the owner, so I'd have to look into that more. Background checks with police and fire, we do believe the outsourcing is the ESOF currently in terms of having that communication with other agencies to streamline timelines and not have resources sent out in those areas. But POST, it's regulated by POST, the Police Officer Standard and Training under the Department of Justice, and there's some pretty strict. Honestly, I have had conversations in the past to say, can we outsource the academies? Can we outsource? I mean, we had some really good conversations under Chief Martin about looking at it, and POST said, no, that's not authorized. And so there are some constraints with being a regulatory agency that's audited by POST for compliance in terms of doing that. So again, ESOF is, I think, an invitation that you can see that I'm open to those items where it creates efficiencies and cost-saving measures for the organization while maintaining the compliance. I hope that gives some insight on those few key areas.
It does. Thank you very much. I have no further questions, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Coleman. Colleagues, any other questions? Ms. Tinter. Ms. Tinter, thank you so much for your partnership with Blue Zones and ensuring employee well-being. How easy is it for our employees to access mental health services, and are many taking advantage of our offerings?
Thank you, Margo, for that question. We do have easy and not easy. And so we can, if I share, we have an employee assistance program which provides 3 free visits for any family member or the employee for any type of mental health support. We also have, that's through Optum Health. We also have the website, which if you really dive into the website, it has a plethora of options. Where we do get usage reports, and I would not say for our population that we have any extensive usage, but we do have usage reports on a monthly basis of how many people are accessing, and it's below 50 usually, 20 or so. Where we see the biggest problem is a lot of mental health providers are more of a cash-based system. They don't accept insurance. That can be a preclusion for many of our employees to continue on with any recommended care because the out-of-pocket expenses, even if they can bill out of network, it can still add up for employees in different compensation ranges. So and then we have the Kaiser and the Blue Shield divide. So if you're a Kaiser employee, you go to Optum and you have your 3 visits and you're feeling connection and you think, I'd like to continue in this for my well-being, but then it has to switch to your insurance provider or a cash system. And so Kaiser doesn't then recognize those providers. And so you did 3 visits, you're feeling a little bit better, and now it's stopped. And now I have to go into the Kaiser network and kind of start over. And so we do get feedback routinely from the employees that that is a setback for them in the process, or that the vendors don't take insurance, and so they're left with, how do I continue this program that I want to do? So again, I think there are some great programs within Blue Shield. There are some very specific programs that they have to mental health wellness, family supports, things of that nature that can be pursued, but they're all within limited services. So that's for our miscellaneous group. The police department has established their wellness program. Risk and HR have worked to support with them. They've contracted with Shielding the Frontline, which has been an amazing opportunity for our employees to provide services that are through that nonprofit that are funded. And so we try to connect them there, and we have had usage reports that show our law enforcement personnel are utilizing that on a routine basis, which is great. That's what we encourage. So I hope that answers your question, that I feel that access is easy. I feel that continued care has some obstacles in the broader system that make it difficult for some of our employees to continue in that treatment program.
Are you aware of other cities who have found solutions when encountering the same obstacles?
Not without additional funding or programs. There are, but again, it depends. We were fortunate enough in the police department to have a grant to fund, and so we implemented a program under with the chief's support of, got your 6, and that's the code of like, I support you. And so it was 6 visits to have some baseline support counseling with professionals that specialize in law enforcement. Again, there was a grant funding for that, so it was wonderful. We have not been able to identify other broad-based. Kaiser has been wonderful to look at grants and try to provide those to our employees in a few ways. We've tried to implement into early and often, like into our academy settings, having members from Kaiser Wellness Team come to start good habits, mental health habits, and recognition from the start. But again, for our more tenured employees that are in our miscellaneous groups, there do seem to be some more obstacles to ongoing mental health.
Well, thank you. Let's continue thinking about what possibly we can do to make sure that our employees are healthy. Thank you. And now we move on to, I don't see any other requests to speak, so Public Works is
Thank you.
next. Thank you, Ms. Tinter.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Okay, I'm Zach Meyer, the Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. I'd like to present to you the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget. First, I want to say a special thank you to Karen Claiborne and her team who's behind me. She's been doing double duty this budget cycle, helping out in solid waste and the entire Public Works Department. And special thanks to my managers in attendance that helped put this together. I'd first like to reiterate the department mission statement to deliver efficient, responsive, and cost-effective public works services and infrastructure that protect and enhance the safety, health, and quality of life in Bakersfield. So I'd like to first cover 2024-25, where we are and some accomplishments, real brief as quickly as I can. We do have a large department. So currently there's 223 projects on our list that are historical projects and projects we added last fiscal year. Large majority of those projects have state and federal grants. Of that 340 million that we have allocated, 169 is state and federal grants and 57 million is dedicated to TRIP. To date, we have 147.5 million encumbered. Part of that has to do with some of our projects have large grant dollars associated with them, and we've tried to deliver and award these projects, and we've had some funding deficiencies, as well as we have a large number of street projects going out to bid the next week or so. So I expect that number to get better as we wind down the end of the fiscal year. So some highlights. So we did start the 7th movement, eastbound 58 to northbound 99 loop connector, provided a couple pictures showing the ongoing construction in that area, and that construction will continue all the way through fiscal year 25-26. We also are getting ready to complete the Garces Memorial Circle enhancement. Most of the improvements are ready, minus some landscape improvements that are still pending. This was a Caltrans and city joint project where we increased the pedestrian and cycling safety through this circle, as well as add some beautification with art murals. Our design engineering team, they did put out the bid the Buena Vista improvement from Wyatt Lane to Stockdale Highway. We also did some Buena Vista improvements with in-house street resurfacing, streets division resources internally. But again, trying to continue the goal of improving the pedestrian and cycling safety in all modes of transportation throughout the city. As well as we did the rehab on Panama Lane from Gosford Road to Stein Road, again, rehabbing the road and enhancing it with better traffic features and paint features. Moving on to some of the other divisions in the department. So we do have a construction surveying division that do construction management on all the city projects. So for this current year, we provide inspection services for 47 projects, having a total contract value of over 70 million. Some of those highlights include pedestrian improvements along Mount Vernon from Ridge Road to Bernard Street, traffic calming demonstration and signal modification on Beale Avenue at Monterey Street and Niles Street, as well as some flashing beacon projects at Callaway, Manhattan, Golden Valley High School, Mountain Vista and Earl Warren Junior High, Old Farm Road at Veterans Elementary. Our subdivisions group, which helps with development through the Public Works Department, just some key highlights. Currently, we've approved 9 street plans, 6 sewer plans, and 5 final maps. Completed 21 parcel mergers, 5 parcel map waivers, 17 lot line adjustments, and has issued 906 street permits, 10 encroachment permits, and over 1,100 transportation permits. So any utility company or anybody that wants to work on our roadway, that's where you see that 906 street permit number come up. For traffic engineering, we completed our active transportation plan that got formally adopted in January earlier this year. We completed an upgrade to the Traffic Operations Center video wall software monitor display to help do more real-time monitoring of traffic throughout the city. Also completed 359 site plans, responded to 370 citizen inquiries, and completed 119 speed profile studies. Our street maintenance division resurfaced or reconstructed 120 lane miles throughout the city, upgraded 126 ADA ramps, installed over 55,000 square feet of sidewalk, and over 11,000 linear feet of curb and gutter. We've also installed, by request, traffic control devices, speed humps, speed tables, and pavement markings for the purpose of slowing down traffic. For general services, another division of Public Works, graffiti removal is a highlight of that division, where we've removed a total of 22,300 graffiti sites. That's what we're projected for the current year. We also responded to over 2,200 streetlight service requests and replaced 23 streetlights, replaced 25 traffic signal poles, and responded to 481 emergency callouts during this current year. Fleet Services continues to maintain all the equipment for the city of Bakersfield, including for police, fire, solid waste are our largest accounts. We're projecting to have over 17,000 services and repairs on equipment. And then we're continuing to plan for infrastructure and replace some equipment to comply with the state's requirements of having zero emissions in the foreseeable future. For solid waste division, we're continuing to chip away with SB 1383 implementation. We're at 85% compliant right now, trying to get to 100% compliant. This metric is trying to get commercial businesses to enlist with organic collection services. Our Mount Vernon Organics Recycling Composting Facility is currently in phase 3 of 4 of a master plan. Part of that, again, has to do with SB 1383 as we plan for that facility for growth in the future. And we've recently just awarded a contract for the materials recovery facility to improve that source or that sorting line, where we received a $5.4 million grant to help fund that project. The table on the right are just some of our service level indicators. I would just like to highlight on a few of them, where our pop-up event program, we're projecting to collect 239,000 pounds from residents coming to those collection sites. Bulky item requests, that's one thing our solid waste division offers for residents to, I think, twice a year can get their bulky items collected. So we've had over 13,000 bulky items collected. And then the number of legal dump cleanups, which is a highlight of our Clean City Initiative teams, we're at 61,000, project to have 61,000 illegal dump cleanups for the current year. So that was I know it was a lot of information. We have a very large department. I know I'm pressed for time, but we do a lot for the city, and it's a lot and that barely scratches the surface of some of our big accomplishments for the current year. Moving forward into fiscal year 25-26, first I'd like to highlight in the little table on the left, or the text on the left, we are moving our subdivision section into development services to create a one-stop shop. There will also be our development inspectors will also be moving into development services department as well. That's why when you look at the graph on the right, I have that highlighted in yellow, or the table on the right, why we see 100% reduction in development services funds for the operating group. But just to cover some of the overall increases and challenges we're facing, we do continue to see rising material and labor costs. With the fleet and vehicles and technology services, we continue to see those rates continue to go up for city users. I continue to see an increase in insurance for workers' compensation and CalPERS rates. And solid waste, year to year, we do have a contract hauler, and those rates go up by the CPI every year. So focusing more in on the table, I'd like to highlight the capital outlay, where we do see a $87 million reduction. Part of that large reduction has to do with the $165 million the year prior. A lot of that was the seventh movement. When we go year to year with these freeway projects, you see a lot of up and down with the amount of capital outlay or capital dollars we put into our capital improvement program. Also, trying to focus more on some of our current projects, bridging some of the funding gaps. So we're not trying to tackle on too many new projects. As you can see on the earlier slides, we do have a lot of projects on our plate, and we're continuing to try to chip away at those. You'll also see in the table third row down under funding sources for general fund PSVS, we show a reduction of $436,000. What you see there is we did have some PSVS dollars in our refuse operations, and we're trying to transition some of those dollars away from PSVS into refuse, which is one of the reasons why the refuse fund, as you can see a few lines below, does see an increase in 14%. Again, most of that has to do with the cost of equipment, the increase that we have to pay for our contracted haulers, and then trying to manage some of our Clean City Initiative teams. And so we do see a pretty big increase in refuse. So looking over personnel for the department, I'll focus on the bar graph first. So you could see in 22-23 we had 478 employees, and then 23-24 we're up to 491. We do dip to 443 this current year. That was because the wastewater division and wastewater treatment plant 2 and 3 transitioned from Public Works to Water Resources, and we continue to see that decline from 443 to 428 due to 18 employees moving from the Public Works Department to the Development Services Department to create that true one-stop shop for plan review and development. Other key highlights for the way our department is currently structured: we have 8 positions in administration, 42 positions in engineering, which after subdivisions leaves, they'll be broken into 4 groups for construction engineering, design engineering, advanced projects delivery, and traffic engineering. We have a complement of 63 positions in our fleet division. Our general services has 70. Our streets and utilities, which is street resurfacing and sewer maintenance, has 114. And our solid waste division, we're anticipating to grow to 131. So we are requesting 3 new positions for solid waste. First one is a heavy equipment operator. So this employee and equipment will be used for commercial collection. Again, this is stemming from the increased level of service we have to provide to comply with SB 1383. With that, administratively, we've seen an increase in workload, so that's why increase in workload administratively and reporting for SB 1383 compliance. So we're requesting a fiscal services specialist 2. And we're also requesting a solid equipment operator. This request is primarily to stay ahead of growth. As the city continues to grow, we want to keep up and try to minimize the amount of overtime we use on staff, as well as we do currently have some challenges with staff out for sick or vacation, and the availability of staff to try to provide coverage on a day-to-day basis. So this equipment operator will help provide some much-needed redundancy. And moving into our proposed capital improvement projects, we have 28 new projects requested for a total of $35,887,000. We're also adding $21,391,000 into existing projects that we currently already have in place. Some of these projects were things that were in design year 1, and now we're looking to construct in year 2. Just for clarity, on the previous slide, I showed a total or capital outlay funds of $78 million. These two numbers together is $57 million. That's because that other number of $78 million also included dollars for cart replacement and refuse, as well as the dollars we need to replace equipment out of from our fleet services division. So some things I would just like to quickly highlight. So for SB1 repairs, we have $9.4 million. Those are primarily for Truxtun Avenue. And for Hegman, that will be doing resurfacing on those 2 major roads next year. The TCC grant dollars, the 2 largest projects in that group would be a 4th Street improvement and P Street improvement. Another one I'd like to highlight is the Transient Occupancy Tax Fund of $2.9 million. That's to rehab the Valley Children's Ice Center. That system is outdated that generates the ice, and we need to replace that. Of the 23 existing projects, just the one I like to highlight is, because we don't get to talk about a lot, is the General Aviation Fund. This Public Works Department also oversees the city's airport. We have $3.8 million of General Aviation Fund that we've already done this project in design. It's to rehab the taxiway and the runway and add better lighting at the municipal airport. So to wrap up the presentation, I would just like to highlight some of the goals and objectives for the department. So these are engineering, construction, top priorities for the next fiscal year. So we currently have the Friant Kern Canal multi-use path that we did, I believe started construction about January earlier this year. This project will be going all through fiscal year 25-26. The eighth movement, which is a design project with another partnership with the City of Bakersfield and Caltrans. That's the southbound 99 to eastbound 58 connector. Again, we're going to continue to work on the design as well as right-of-way acquisition to be able to have the land to build the connector and then have the design to do a construction project in the next probably 2 fiscal years. We also will be completing a comprehensive safety action plan that will provide direction for safe routes to school and safe routes for senior initiatives. So we did get a grant of around $980,000. I'll just like to highlight $400,000 of those dollars will be geared towards school safety. And the next one is the H Street corridor improvement. This project is currently at 90% design. We'll be looking to probably go out to bid and award this fall to do this project from State Route 58 to State Route 204. And the last project I'd like to highlight is the improvements on 18th and 19th Street from L Street to O Street. This is phase 1 of will probably be a 3-phase project. Very similar timeline to H Street. We're at 90% design, and we're looking to go out to bid this summer and award early in the fall. For top priorities for Public Works operations, so we did just award the contract for the materials recovery facility sorting line. That is a design build contract, so starting to get the design completed and be able to start the construction for this next year is one of our goals. We'll continue to enhance and improve the city's anti-graffiti program and continue to promote its use on the mobile app. We are looking to partner with a consultant to do a short-term and long-term zero-emission equipment and infrastructure plan to comply with the California Resources Air Board. Again, we're being imposed to have goals and milestones in the near future where we have to get so much of our equipment to a zero-emission type equipment, and we need to plan for what equipment we want to transition over, as well as make sure we have the right infrastructure in place to fuel it. And the last one, to continue to resurface all our city roads. So some of the roads that are on the agenda earlier or next fiscal year, Panama Lane, 2 miles east of Cottonwood to basically to the city limits in southeast Bakersfield, California Avenue from Real Road to Oak Street, and Newstein Road from Panama Lane to Taft Highway. So, so with that, that is the Public Works Department budget presentation for fiscal year 25-26. I'm available now for questions, and I have staff with me that I may call up to answer what I can't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Zach, for the size and scope of your department. I thought you moved with haste. So job well done and covered a lot of really important work. And thank you to you and your team for everything that you guys do with keeping our public right-of-ways safe and making the appropriate adjustments. I did have a couple of questions in the presentation. I just wanted to get some clarity on the budget. If we could go back to that slide. I know that there's a couple of new positions that are being requested in this department, but I just wanted to be clear that I know it's highlighted on the funding sources that there is less funding coming into the department, but also on the personnel services, we should be spending significantly less without the DS, the development services employees within the department. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
With less staff from development services, that is part of the reason why we see a slight decrease in the overall expenditures for personnel services.
For personnel services, correct. It almost remains unchanged because, again, we're losing 18 positions, and then you still have some increases due to salaries, benefits, and things like that. So that's why it's slightly down.
Got it. And then on the haulers line item, you mentioned that prices are going up. How long are those contracts with our haulers?
So I believe it's 2033 or 2032 is our current contract with, our agreement is with Kern Refuse. They were bought out by Burtech a few years ago, but our agreement is with Kern Refuse, and it currently runs to 2032.
Great. And I'm sure in the contract, there's baked in fixed increases year over year. Okay. Great.
Yes, it references a specific CPI down south, so we're obligated to pay them more each year per that CPI.
Got it. Great. I just wanted to avoid, if we were doing year to year, having to go back to the table and renegotiate. Those costs would be pretty tough. Super grateful to Ms. Byers, who I don't know if she's in the room. Thank you for sharing that HUD is going to continue to fund CDBG entitlements, which is fantastic news, particularly for mine and Councilmember Gonzalez's ward. Last couple of questions on, I believe it's slide 14, a couple of the CIP projects. It's my understanding that the 7th and 8th movement are both fully funded for implementation.
For the 7th movement, yes. For the 8th movement, we do have all the money for design and right-of-way, so that's currently what we're working on. I feel confident we'll be able to get the dollars for construction. I think in our meetings with Caltrans and with KERCOG, it seems very positive that when we get closer and closer to construction, we'll be able to receive the funding to complete that project. And right now, actually, as I'm saying this, currently the arrangement is we're going to do the design and right-of-way of 8th movement. It's currently Caltrans's obligation to construct it. So that could change, but right now that's our current plan.
That's your agreement. Okay, great. I appreciate you mentioning and lifting up the 900,000+ that's available through Safe Routes to Schools. It's been a huge effort and push for the council, for staff. But I just wanted to be clear that that's really the only dollars that are available in this current budget for multimodal specific projects, or are there other line items baked in elsewhere?
With some of our complete street projects, like we mentioned 8th Street, to me that fits the description of a multimodal project, as well as 18th and 19th, the before and after. It should be very, very clear that it'll be much easier and safer for somebody walking or on a bike. Will be able to go through those corridors much easier and much safer.
If I may, Councilmember, also just add a couple thoughts, and I meant to jump in before we got to questions, that we asked Public Works to provide the overarching summary of the budget numbers for CIPs, but towards the end of the workshop, we'll list out specifically the CIPs for this year that we're asking council to consider. So you'll have another presentation that will be just about those CIPs and some of the options for council in making some of those decisions. And within that, and in part we did it that way because there's CIPs in multiple departments. We're going to put them all in one place towards the end of today's workshop. But then within there, there is at council request two options to fund grant match or multimodal for this coming year as well, beyond the handful of projects that are already designed and going to construction, to have some other multimodal dollars available in that fund like we have in prior years.
Fantastic, thank you. Last question is on H Street and 18th and 19th. It's my understanding that we have some implementation funding, but I'm not exactly sure how much and what % we still need.
So for H Street, I believe it's what we're looking to try to find. Was it 3 or 4? 4? 3. It was 3 million that were, and also for 18th and 19th was about 4 million. So what happened is we did program these projects previously, whether it was this current year or the year prior. We did go out to bid on another project, which was Chester, which had a big shortfall. And we looked at those bid quantities to estimate where we are with H Street, where we are with 18th and 19th, and that's where we identified this delta. So we're looking to try to bridge that going into next year, as well as continue to look at our list of existing projects to see if we want to consider a reprioritization so we can see if we can put these projects out to bid and award construction in the fall.
And again, let me just add a little bit more. Mr. Myers also trying not to get ahead of me, I believe, in that that reprioritization process, we've looked at CIPs from former years that have had carry forwards, and we've identified notable funding that we think we can, because these are both, the two you mentioned, 18, 19, and H Street are both grant funded. Well, they have grant funding in them that we will lose if we don't move forward in a particular timeline, especially. And so I've given direction to staff to identify that savings from some of these projects that have either carried forward and are no longer needed, or reprioritizing some of those projects. And we believe there will be funding sufficient for both H and 18th and 19th from that reprioritization process. And so you won't see 18th, 19th, or H Street on your list of potential CIPs, because we're going to fund those from existing resources.
Fantastic. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few comments. Great to see the Frank Kern Canal moving forward and actually going to get completed. And also the 7th and 8th movements. Obviously, we don't feel that the freeway project, Centennial Corridor, is complete until those movements are complete. So good to see those moving forward. And I do think CTC in June perhaps is going to look at funding the 8th movement. The one-stop shop, I'm glad to see that finally move over. We've talked about that for years, and I know that was a big priority for former Councilmember Bruce Freeman. What is our current pavement index?
I think the pavement, the PCI was last done, I think, in 2020. We're actually looking to go back with that same consultant to do another assessment later this calendar year.
Oh, okay.
It was in the 60s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember that. I thought we'd update it since then.
No, but we should have that in next fiscal year.
Again, you mentioned graffiti, and it always amazes me how, I don't know, 60, 70 per day that we're cleaning up and just never ending. You mentioned doing Hageman Road. What portion of Hageman is it?
Got it written down. Actually, I don't have it written down. Old Farm to Callaway, then Coffee to Knutson.
Great. And the Hageman flyover is still on our list. our wish list for the future?
I'd say it's on our wish list. We are still meeting and trying to see how we could continue with the right-of-way acquisition for the flyover itself, as well as knowing that we also have a design for the multi-use path that goes with it. So I don't have anything substantial right now to where I feel confident saying, here's what's going to happen in the near future.
We have grants for the right-of-way, though,
Yes,
correct?
we do have dollars for the right-of-way, and we are making progress. I think there's still 3 landowners we're trying to work with, but we are meeting on that regularly at the moment.
Okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I don't see any other requests to speak. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And next, we'll have Development Services. Welcome.
Thank you. Mike doesn't want to adjust. Good afternoon, Phil Burns, Development Services Director. It's my pleasure to bring forward our Development Services Fiscal Year 25-26 budget. I want to first start out with a special thanks to Cassandra Quintera for putting our Development Services budget together, and also Michael Doyle and Jose Gonzalez for collaborating with Senate Manager's Office staff to provide a video, which you guys can see in a few minutes. All right. So I want to take a little different approach this year to really highlight some of the department's work. So I have a video that I hope cues up. Good. Here's the building division by Michael Doyle, planning led by Jenny Ng, code enforcement or land development by Manny Bill, and code enforcement with the team. I want to highlight some of our projects. This is some subdivision work, there's plan review of streets, houses, grading, just the kind of varied work that our team does, and highlight our collaboration with other departments for projects like this Renaissance at Baker, where we work with both other departments and developers to make sure projects come to fruition. Then we also work on commercial projects. This is an example out of Panama, the Calderas project off Gosford, where we worked with timelines, various departments to ensure a project gets built, health and safety items, along with the needed dates. This is a commercial project at Panama and Gosford. This is a new Target facility. It just highlights the amount of work that our staff completes on a daily basis. Another collaboration. This is the CityServe project down on F Street. Again, a lot of hand-holding, working with developers that may be not familiar with development, and really assisting them to get their project to completion. And that CityServe was the first 2 floors open on May 12th. Then we move into code enforcement. This is one of our special projects demo. This is up on off of Mount Vernon. And it's just, again, another example of the work that our staff does on a daily basis to make Bakersfield a better place to live. It's all about quality of life. There's a picture of what's actually demolished. This is another example of a huge demolition along the railroad tracks where we had these fire-damaged buildings. And sometimes it takes some time to get these buildings down, but it really is about quality of life and staff working with local developers and to get these projects done. One of the other tasks that Code does on a regular basis is our rapid response team. We've had an increase of from 7,914 calls for service to 10,374 calls for service for these encampments. And our encampment abatements have doubled from 2,923 to 5,622 abatements. And the volume of trash along with those has significantly increased. And this is just representation of, if we fill these containers with trash, this is what the representation of just the trash due to the homeless encampments. With that, I want to move to, you've heard a little bit from Mr. Meyer about the one-stop shop, and that is coming to fruition here in 25-26. We have the 18 staff members coming over from Public Works which consists of a management member, 8 plan review staff. There's a supervisor for inspections and 6 inspectors and a couple support staff. And the goal again is to put development under one roof and hopefully to improve internal communications and external communications to make projects go smoother. Want to highlight, we're also still working on our computer systems. This last year we did the Clarity system. There's still ongoing improvements to electronic inspection results. Want to highlight Camino Guide. That's something we're working on currently. It is a front end to Clarity so that perhaps you're someone that's not familiar with permitting and you want to understand what you need to do and what process. And this Camino Guide will be that front end. So instead of maybe reaching out to staff, hopefully it'll be something that interacts with the public to guide them to what type of permit. Maybe they're trying to start a new business. And it'll help them, understand what kind of process they need to go through. Really what we're trying to do, this one-stop shop, is addressing customer service and efficiency overall for the city. With that, I want to move to our actual budget numbers. And in our 25-26 budget, our personnel budget's just over $16.7 million, which is an increase of $3.1 million. This is due to the reorg. That's the 18 staff members for the one-stop shop. PERS increases, workers' comp increases. Our operation budget, $6.1 million, was also a $1.3 million increase. This is also due to the one-stop shop, fleet costs, tech services, rental rates, utility rates, on top of, again, the reorg. Our capital outlay shown here is $140,000. About $90,000 that's for a new F-550 pickup for code enforcement. Since we've been working with Community Vitality, we're working 6 a.m. till midnight in our shifts. So we have vehicles that are running from basically from 6 a.m. all the way to midnight. And we need another vehicle to offset and kind of prolong the life of some of those current pieces of equipment. And the other amount is for the maintenance for the Camino Guide software, which brings our total budget to the $22.9 million. Moving to our personnel overview. Again, it's 130 staff members, 56 in code, the 18 in planning, 31 in building, development services, administration is 6. What you do see here is the land development shown as 19. That's because part of the process moving the one-stop shop over, we are asking for an additional engineer 2. And this was established through many meetings with the outside development community on where they were having the most complaints related to site plan review, with solid waste and the timing it takes to get with staff. I mean, they're a busy group. We're trying to fill that gap along with traffic engineering is also one that is extremely busy. So we're trying to kind of plug those holes by adding this additional person to create the one-stop shop so that staff is coming, or public's coming to us in development services and not being told, hey, you need to go see someone in solid waste. Hey, you need to go see someone in public works. It's really creating that one-stop shop. And we'll also be housing a person in fire from fire department in our building the majority of the week also to make sure that we have all those potential questions from the public covered. The other is a reclass, that supervisor 1 to 2. What that really is getting a coordinator. We want, as part of this one-stop shop, the public to be able to come to one person and for that person to go track down that information so that we're not putting the public on a wild goose chase. We want them to be answered, and also the accountability. I want a supervisor that's looking at the overall flow of the projects to making sure we're hitting our set timeframes. And that position also, that reclass that person would be responsible to look at those timeframes. This is just another look at our complement. And you notice there's a pretty large growth from 21 to 25, 19.35%. And again, this last year, that's 19 positions over, so it's over half of it just in this last budget year. With that, I'm here. Thank you for hearing our presentation. I'm here to ask questions. And again, I do have Ms. Kotera and Mr. Doyle here in the audience too.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, these numbers always, 5,600 encampment abatements. It's hard to grasp that. It's just amazing. What is the timing on the one-stop shop?
So I'm glad you asked that, Councilmember Smith. It's going to be a phased approach. So what I didn't talk about is we do have a remodel planned to facilitate the additional staff and actually reconstruct the counter operations to make it as one counter on one floor. So the public will come into one place, so they're not going to multiple floors. Again, if we're going to make a one-stop, we want to make that happen. So the staff will start reporting to me on July 1. However, they won't be over into our building sometime by the end of the year. I don't have a good date. I've been on vacation for the last 3 weeks. I'm sure Mr. Kakal is still in the office. He may be able to tell you a little more of a time frame on that, but right now I haven't had a chance to meet with Sean to find out what our remodel time frame is going to be.
So physically, it won't be till the end of the year, but as far as priority, hierarchy.
As far as hierarchy, it'll be July 1.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I don't see any other requests. Councilmember Arias, are you trying to? Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to get technology to work. Thank you for the presentation, Phil. Appreciate all of the information here. I just wanted to give you a shout out, you and your team, for the encampment work and taking specific focus and aim at some of the large illegal dumping that's been taking place. As you know, in Southeast Bakersfield, there are many streets and corridors that do not have development along Pacheco, MLK Boulevard, and you guys have been just incredible at removing a lot of that waste. As you know, if it goes untouched and unclean for a little while, folks see it as an opportunity to go and dump themselves. And so I really appreciate your team's efforts there. And then also just looking forward to the one-stop shop. I know, like Councilmember Smith mentioned, there was a huge push from Bruce Freeman. And so looking forward to seeing that take place. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Don't see any other requests, so thank you very much, Mr. Burns. And now moving on to Economic and Community Development.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to jump right into our budget. We overall are going to be doing a decrease of almost 24%. The largest portion of that is our capital outlay. Last year we had 2 projects. We had $3 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and there was $2.5 million for Open Door Network for shelter construction. So removing those really results in a large decrease in our overall budget. We have some increase in personnel services that's also going to impact general fund. It's not really a true number. So what we do is a lot of our grant funds have administration costs. And so we did CDBG CV. It was about $7 million. It included admin. That grant is now closing out. You'll see it at the next city council meeting. And so they're going back into general fund. But then we have another supervisor who is doing a lot more work in housing. So our permanent local housing allocation, our local housing trust fund, all of those have administration funds, but it's a reimbursement on the state. And so the general fund fronts that, and then those resources come back. So our personnel services in that increase are going to be offset once we request those funds back from the state. And so it's a little bit of a misleading a little bit. We also have some funding sources, our entitlement funds, like Councilmember Arias stated. It was included in the president's skinny budget that our HUD resources were going to be removed. We've had a lot of conversations in front of council recently for the consolidated plan, how much that is annually. So it is about $5 million annually. It includes the Community Development Block Grant. It includes home funds, Emergency Solution Grant, as well as HOPWA, which is our Housing for People with AIDS. We received word last week that we are receiving that entitlement. They also are proposing an increase of about $165,000 in this budget. Because we feel a little bit tenuous with this, we are going into it optimistically for this next year, and then we'll see what happens next year with those entitlement funds. As you know, for the Transformative Climate Community, that is our TCC grant, and about $22 million. But for this year, this is what we have allocated for human resources or our personnel services. You'll start to see this program as it moves forward. There is public works projects, and Zach mentioned those before for those programs, but we have additional programs. The Bakersfield Senior Center is one of them. There's community gardens. There's about 14 partners that we're working with, and so you'll see this come through as we request those funds to move forward with that project. But overall, a 23% decrease in our budget. When we look at what some of those budget changes are, there was an operating increase for the Navigation Center. So the Navigation Center started with 150 beds. 118 beds were added in 2023. 50 beds were added in 2024. By adding this number, so now we're up to 318 beds. With that, there is some operating increase that is included, and that's why that budget has gone up. Mainly because of that increase from 150 beds to 318 beds does create that increase. We are requesting to actually downsize a position. We have an open admin analyst 2. We are requesting to decrease that to an ECD specialist based off of what it is that we need in our department. We had one of each, and so with this request, we would have 2 ECD specialists. Our housing team has been very busy this last couple of years. We did receive $6.5 million of ARPA for the Community Land Trust, 37 city-owned lots. Those are going to be transferred for home ownership into the land trust, and so we've been continuing to do a lot of work with that. Over the next year, those homes will start to be built, and those will go into home ownership. It's kind of interesting timing because even the state is dedicating more funds to home ownership. So one of the resources we get from the state is our permanent local housing allocation. They have required that over our next upcoming years that 40% of those funds go to home ownership. I kind of talk year over year what's going on with home ownership in our community. It has dropped over the last couple years. We were pretty steady at 60% home ownership. Across the city, we're about 57% home ownership. Home ownership is one of those things in your community that makes people really reinvest in the area. When we talk about our TCC neighborhoods, that's at about 20% home ownership. So you can really see that there's some disparity in where it's happening and occurring, and that's why we have a lot of focus with the land trust in increasing home ownership. So Renaissance at Baker, that's what's pictured here. We are expecting a ribbon cutting. It's not only the 85 units of affordable housing that they're doing. There's workforce development on the first floor. They have community gardens. They have a community space. They have a learning center. All of that is occurring at that project. We're excited about that one. And then the Housing Authority, just this morning, they did their ribbon cutting for the 150 units of senior housing. When we talk about the importance of funding, we recognize how incredibly expensive it is to build affordable housing. I've talked about it when both of you guys were on, or when you were on the PSVS committee, that affordable housing isn't affordable to construct, and it's for a variety of reasons. The funds need to be layered. They typically include prevailing wage either at the federal level or the state level. But there's also some construction requirements, and it takes 7 to 8 or 4 to 8 resources in order to build an affordable unit. When we talk about seniors in our community, in the Bakersfield area, the average Social Security is about $1,700 a month. But the average one-bedroom in Bakersfield rents for about $1,100. So when we talk about needing subsidized housing, affordable housing requires that individuals not pay more than 30% of their income, which would only be about $500 a month. And so you see how subsidized this housing is to construct, because banks would rather loan to somebody who is going to get that $1,200 to $1,600 a month, but that's one of the reasons. The Let's Ring 150 senior units, they applied 7 times for tax credits and were denied every time because they didn't have enough points. They came to the city this last time. They were just a few points under a project in Fresno. With the trust fund, we were able to provide additional resources. It brought their score up, and because of that, Let's Ring is under construction today. So it's a very important program to the community. We also had a program this past 2 years for home weatherization and rehabilitation. When homes start to hit about 30 years old, that's when you really start to see deferred maintenance impacting those. And so with the home weatherization and rehabilitation, people were able to get new windows, new roofs, items like that. Another one of our departments units is economic development. We awarded $1.5 million in entrepreneurship grants, supported 883 small businesses. It's interesting because we do have the big projects, and usually big projects, they're, they have the big ribbon cutting. And so Cal Dairies, we had a big ribbon cutting, very important project to the community, 500 jobs. By supporting all of these small businesses, we did end up with 290 full-time equivalent jobs in our community. And so very incremental, very small, but it has a large impact on the number of jobs created to our community. We also purchased chronic nuisance properties, tax default properties. Those are going to be transferred to the land trust to be redeveloped for home ownership. And then we completed the Old Town Kern visualization. That had a lot of community engagement, a lot of great projects. We'll be bringing back before City Council what that visualization showed could be some target projects for the Old Town Kern area. Like I said earlier, we did complete the 50-bed expansion. There was the Community Gives Back, what is it, Big Kern Day, Volunteer Big Kern Day. We had city staff members go to the BLNC, do some repainting, do some maintenance around there, planted some items. So those are some of the activities going on at the BLNC. 95 individuals were placed in permanent housing. One of the things that BLNC has done is a housing navigator where they work with a lot of our local property owners to see about getting individuals into permanent housing. And then we completed that 2025 to 2030 consolidated plan for HUD. And because of that, we're eligible for those $5 million annually. So with that, our personnel, we've remained steady at the personnel level for the most part. So we have 23 full-time equivalent. We did place we do have an open position. We've kind of placed it on hold. We had another individual who has resigned that has been working in community development. And because those HUD resources are a little bit tenuous, I've requested to place that position on hold as well until we see what happens with that budget in the next fiscal year. We are requesting to reclass the analyst down to an ECD specialist. And so looking at our personnel and seeing how we can be proactive in the activities that we do, but also in our personnel cost. We do have 5 grant-funded positions. 2 are with the TCC grant. We do have one that works for Californians for All Youth Workforce Development, and so all of our intern programs. We have 6 intern programs here at the city, and so Paula Rubio, she's the individual who is grant funded and works in the ECD department. The other 2 positions are kind of on hold as well. It's the EPA Community Change Grant. We were awarded $20 million for that program. It's a federal program that we received notification that it was going to be pulled back. But then we also heard recently that it might be back on the table. So we're just holding still for a while with that position. We're going to wait and see how it all flushes out in the federal government. But for now, this is what the ECD department looks like. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Beyer. Colleagues? Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question on the affordable housing. We know that that is an essential source of funding for projects like the one that we were at celebrating today at the Let's Ring Apartments. So what is the total fund balance for our Affordable Housing Trust Fund at this time?
We've done a couple different things. City Council and resolution promised 5 years of 500,000 and then have been a lot more generous than that. Council has provided 5 million the first year, 2.6, 5, and then we're in our 4th year now. Right now, we do have a NOFA out for 8 million. That is 2 years worth of programs, and that's because when we talk about grants in the ECD department, we're really heavily focused on getting grants, but also leveraging grants. And so what we do is a NOFA provide a commitment letter to a developer that then they can take it to HCD is one of the largest funding sources. And they typically every year have what's called a super NOFA, and they have about 6 grant resources within that. And so we try to line up our NOFA with that. They didn't do one 2 summers ago, and so we had held that fund, which was good because then we applied for Local Housing Trust Fund, which is a 2-to-1 match. We applied for that in December, and then we're notified that we weren't awarded. So we do have about 8 million out in a NOFA currently for housing developers.
Got it. Over 2 years.
Yeah, it's a 2-year.
And the intention is to fully spend down that fund balance through that NOFA.
And see what projects they have, yeah. And one of the things I didn't say, like even Let's Ring, I know that per unit cost, they are expensive to build. The city's resource was about $26,000 per unit, and so it's a pretty minor cost. Well, it is expensive still, but it's a minor portion if we're able to get those 150 senior units constructed by utilizing that fund.
If I may add just a couple of other points. We are not obligated to spend all of the money on the NOFA. I'm sure we'll have probably that many projects that are proposed. We've always had more projects proposed than funding available. But we've also been intentional, as Ms. Byers has already described, and so I wanted to highlight this, that we want to have some funding that is specifically available for things like first-time home buyers and for accessory dwelling unit, programs. And so we don't necessarily assume we're going to spend down the entire NOFA on just those large projects, that we may carve out certain portions per council direction on how to spend down the trust fund. And then to speak to our efforts around our application for the state match to our trust fund, because our housing element has not been certified, was the largest sticking point there. And while we know it's probably a little outside of their typical process, we're going to be advocating to the state that as our housing element gets adopted in the very near future, right, Phil? We're trying. That we will go back and ask them for reconsideration.
Fantastic. Thank you for that information. I think it's important to note that we have a current fund balance in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think one of the considerations of this council should be to consider putting a pause on some of the one-time allocations and knowing that we have funding in that really important bucket that can get us through the next 2 years. I think demonstrates that we will continue, this pursuit to support some of our affordable housing developers, even if we can't make a significant contribution in this current year. I also appreciate the fact that you're doing what you can to save taxpayers some money and reclassifying one of the positions. So I appreciate that. And then my last comment was around TCC. Where do those dollars exist today? Are they in our account? Are they in the state's account?
I'm going to look over towards Misty Eaton. Well, I have Misty Eaton and Christian Muir on this side, and Jason's over there. So money is...
The short answer is they're still with the state. It's a reimbursable grant. So once we allocate it into our budget and move it into our fund, we will be able to draw down and get reimbursed from the state.
Great. And are those currently in the May revise, or was it included in previous budget cycles so we don't have to? In previous budget cycles?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. There are no other requests to speak. Just one question related to the housing element. How close is close?
We will be submitting in the next 2 weeks our fourth submittal. I would characterize it as the first response back was a very vague, hey, you got more work to do. And then as we've had multiple responses back, we've been narrowing down the feedback to now we have very specific feedback and we're having dialogue back and forth. We had frustration initially that we weren't getting direction about, well, what do we need to be changing now? We have specific conversations about what needs to be included there. Not trying to get ahead of the county, but some of that joint advocacy between city and county to bring HCD leadership down here had good outcomes for the county, and they've just heard back from the state that their housing element is going to be approved. And we think we're in very good shape, but I would argue if we have still another series of edits, I think we're going to appeal to the reason of the leadership who we've met with at HCD to say, you know, we're close enough, let's move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beyer. And now Recreation and Parks.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Darren Budak, Director of Recreation and Parks. I'm gonna set the record for the shortest presentation. So I'm gonna help you guys out here this afternoon. But before I get started, I asked my staff to bring in some highlights on what we've accomplished over the year. And as you can imagine, within our department, they do a lot of phenomenal things. So what I've chose to do is just highlight one from each of the respective divisions. And I'll start with our parks. As many of you are aware of, we started our drought-tolerant plant replacement program of turf throughout the city, and I can say, as of today, as a result of the program from our partnerships with the water and Cal Water grants that we received to remove that turf, we are now saving 12 million gallons of water each and every year by just reducing that. So that's been accomplished in the last 14 to 16 months in our Parks Division. Our Recreation Division, one I wanted to highlight is our softball program. We have approximately about 110 to 125 teams, and a team is anywhere from 10 to 15 players that are in our leagues, and we offer 3 leagues a year. And with the Mesa Moran completion that's coming up here this summer of the phase 2 of that, we anticipate that going up 30 to 50%. So we're talking thousands of people getting out and enjoying our parks and our programs. And then within our Ranger program, Billy Owens has done a phenomenal job with our Ranger program. One thing that we really wanted to highlight, and I guess we'll take it as a kudos, is our call for service in our parks is significantly down from 18 months ago. And the reason is because our Rangers are proactively in those parks each and every day. And I've seen some parks that historically have seen minimal action in them with citizens and, you know, the kids and stuff, to they're being revitalized. You know, a couple Patriots Park, Central Park, you know, we're seeing families in there all day, every day now, which is phenomenal. So, and then last but not least is our construction division, and Fidel Gonzalez, I will give him a shout out on that. Over the last 3 to 4 years, our department has been given numerous projects that we're very thankful for throughout the city. And without any additional staff, Fidel and his crew have taken on all these projects. And I'm happy to say at this point, we are now have all of them at one stage of construction or another. So we don't have any projects that are sitting waiting to get started. So that's a huge accomplishment for him and his staff. So with that, our mission statement, Recreation Parks enhances the quality of life through a variety of programs, parks, and partnerships. And as I just attest to, this all happens with our partners throughout, you know, whether it's internal, external, it's all about partnership. So with that, looking at our budget numbers, you can see we have a slight increase in both of our personnel services and operations, and I'll get into the details on the next slide of that. But where I think you see the biggest impact is our operating capital and our capital outlay. Our capital outlay is down by $5.175 million. So that has a very big impact on our budget. As you can see, the breakdown of the different fund sources right below that. So overall, we have an operating budget reduction of 8.9%. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Okay, the budget changes and new proposals. As many of my colleagues have already said, the increases are as a result of attributed to salaries, benefits, our risk management. Our department has a big risk rate that we constantly try to manage, but it continues to go up. Our fleet rates and technical services. On the right-hand side, I want to highlight a couple of our capital improvement projects, our park amenities and renovation improvements, our PARI project. We're asking for $500,000 there. Wilson Parks, we're going to do a renovation of those at $475,000, and then block wall repairs. Just a bit of clarification on that block wall repairs. It's not repairs in a sense like we have accidents throughout the year, the cars crashing them all the time. That's done through our operating budget. This block wall repair is actually the continuation, the next phase of on Weibel Road of a wall that's deteriorated and fallen down that we're completely replacing. So it's not a repair, it's a replacement. It's the next phase of that project. And then you'll see some of the other optional projects that we're asking for in the budget. Come on. Okay, recreation parks, our personnel overview. You can see we're holding tight at 201 employees. One thing I did want to mention is internally, that's pretty impressive for us because over the last 14 to 18 months, our department has grown by over 40 acres. We grow on average about 10 acres every year of new streetscapes because of all the new development and all that's going on. So we get that, and our staff continues to bring them in. In addition to that, we had 5 new football fields at Sports Village, where we got Mason Marin Complex, and then also a brand new Linnell Brahma Park in the southeast. So we're taking on all these new acres and a direction where we're finding efficient ways to maintain that and keep that in check without adding full-time staff. Okay, a couple of accomplishments. Things to point out here is you can see the before after is pretty dramatic, but one thing I wanted to point out here is not only do we go in and improve these facilities, but we take an in-depth look at them, and you can see in the picture on the right, that's an additional sidewalk that our staff identified and had put in addition to the project to improve the ADA access to these facilities. So every time we go in there and do these improvements, we're looking at ways to improve access for everyone. As mentioned earlier, Linnell Brahma Park was a long time coming. We finally got the ribbon cut. I'm happy to say that project was significantly funded by a grant, so it took a little time to get it all through, but it's open and it's a very popular park. And then last but not least, I would like to point out something that's sort of new to our department that we've been working on for about 8 years is our camera system. We are now operating 4 parks that have full-time cameras throughout that'll help us, and we've done this in cooperation with the police department, so they actually get real-time footage in their center so they can see what's going on out there. And then when I presented this picture to our Veterans Committee at one of their meetings, they were ecstatic to see that we actually have something looking at that 24 hours a day. And one thing to note is what we do is we put what's called a geofence around this facility, and so we know after 10 o'clock at night when the park's closed, if somebody goes in there, all of our rangers that are working till 1, 2 in the morning will get an immediate alert on their phone, and they can get on there and see what's going on there, and then they can choose to send somebody over there or something to protect those assets. And we will be increasing that to another 4 to 5 parks in the next 2 to 3 months. We're going to be doing Jefferson Park, Plans Park, Greystone Park, Patriots Park, and then depending on funds, we may add a 5th. So what's going on? With that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Budek. That beautiful memorial at Jestro Park, the last roll call was held there today for our veterans, and I know the community very much appreciates that. Councilmember Smith, or Councilmember Arias. You are full of questions.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Just really excited about the cameras in the parks. I remember several years ago when all we had were the mobile stations, and I was begging Chief Terry to loan it for a couple of days and take it out to MLK Park. So the fact that we actually have stationary kind of ingrained into the park camera system is just incredible. Just the deterrence factor alone with the blinking light. And maybe some signage. I mean, it makes a huge difference, and the families feel it. And I've personally received calls and text messages thanking, us for putting those in those parks because it creates that atmosphere of safety. So I just want to say thank you. I would love to know which parks they're currently in and which parks you're looking to expand into.
Okay, yeah. And to add on to that, Councilman Arias, that's in our new build packages. In Linnell Brahma, it was our first park that we've ever done it from stage one. We actually have that built into, so that park has multiple cameras throughout it, and that will be hopefully our standard moving forward. But I'll get you a full list of the parks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias and Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to ask about the undeveloped parks. That's one of the top priorities of council this year was to make some movement on those. And so exactly what movement are we going to make?
Okay, within our budget right now, we have money set aside. We've already started the design work on Anton Giovanni Park, and then we're asking for an additional money to start it would be a third design of a park. So we're looking, we have funds for 2 right now, and then we're asking for additional funds to start a third park.
The design?
The design, yes.
And there's how many undeveloped parks that we own?
9.
9. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. No other requests. Thank you, Mr. Budek.
Mayor, as we're about to call up our water department, I just wanted to remind again, as a time check, we have this water one. We have one other presentation after water, which is just a summarization of those CIP projects. But we will move expeditiously through both of those if we can.
Thank you, and welcome back. I will need to step out for a 2 o'clock meeting, so if we're not finished, Councilmember Smith will take over. I'll come back after it. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Go and Council. I'm Chris Budak. I'm the Water Director for the City of Bakersfield. And today we're going to talk about the Water Department budget. The Water Department was established in July 1st, 2024, and is made up of 2 divisions, the Water Resources Division and the Wastewater Division. Water Resources Division manages the Kern River water supply. Oops, sorry, let me go back. There we go. As well as ensures that 166,000 residents receive safe, clean drinking water through our domestic system. The Wastewater Division receives the city's residential and commercial septage and operates and maintains the wastewater facilities to treat secondary and tertiary water. I would like to recognize Assistant Directors Yvette Roldan and Daniel Maldonado, as well as Don Spangler, who is our FASO, who helped with developing the budget as well as this presentation. The Water Department's mission statement is to holistically manage the city's water portfolio and provide safe and reliable access to water for its residents. This table identifies all of the expenses and revenue for the entire department. It includes operations, maintenance, and capital costs for both divisions, and we have multiple revenue sources. I do need to acknowledge, though, that we do have 3 funds, and all the funds are independent. So I will talk about each fund individually moving forward. To start at the top, we have an overview of all the department's expenses. The personnel services includes an increase based on an 11% adjustment to the operator 3 positions within wastewater, and that was a part of our class and compensation studies done through HR. In addition, we have operating increase of about $8.2 million and CIP increase of about $10 million. The debt service that's identified is for the wastewater bonds as well as for the Improvement District Number 4, Henry C. Garnett water purification plant, thank you, lots of P's, bond that we pay a share of being part of that facility. Fund transfers are associated with Public Works fleet, and we do pay for equipment through fleet, and so we have fund transfers identified there. As far as the revenue, we show an additional $10.7 million between 2024 into 2025-26. And I would like to mention that there is a reduction of our revenue, and that's going to other departments. There's about $8.3 million that we use towards Public Works streets as they maintain and operate the sewer collection and the storm drain system. So we provide them the revenue to be able to provide those services. I'd now like to specifically discuss the River and Ag Division, or unit within the Water Resources Division. Some of the accomplishments that we had in 2024-25 included diverting about approximately 690,000 acre feet of water to protect people and property. We performed maintenance on 184 storm drain sumps, and we replaced 134 concrete panels within the Carrier and the Kern River Canal. We do have an adjustment on our salaries, and this is due to the Engineer 3 position that was fully funded under River and Ag, and it should be a shared cost between River and Ag and domestic. So you will see that slight adjustment on personnel. As far as increases to operations, that includes internal rates to pay for trash, sewer, computers, fleet services, as well as additional costs for utilizing outside services when we have to do significant earthwork within the river. And finally, we need to perform or prepare a stormwater management plan this year as part of our Nepidus program. The CIP budget is a decrease, but we still are requesting $1.1 million in 25-26, and that's to address 2 structures within the 2,800 acre facility, recharge facility, as well as to do some improvements on the Carrier Canal head reconstruction. The revenue increase is based on water sales due to a favorable water year. The Municipal Water District, the Municipal Water Division, the main accomplishments this year were to focus on conservation and to expand our rebate program. We're working directly with Cal Water to utilize some of their advertising and materials to promote the rebate program. In addition, we removed about 22,000 square feet of grass from the front of the Water Resources building and replaced it with drought-tolerant landscape as well as hardscapes to reduce water use. And finally, our department does work with promoting development as we have reviewed a number of waterline plans as well as we perform testing for fire flows within the city. Again, you'll see a slight adjustment on the personnel services cost, and again, this is due to the Engineer 3 position. As far as operations, we do have an increase in our operating budget by about $5 million. The majority of that is associated with electrical costs as well as increased costs for water, purchasing treated water. We have some repair and maintenance. We added in money to replace our existing meters with what we call AMI Badger meters. so that so that our residents can have real-time results on their water use, which will help with conservation. As well as we moved about $500,000 out of our CIP into our O&M budget, and that was associated with well maintenance. We have to perform well maintenance annually, as we have over 65 wells, and so it's really not a capital improvement project when you have to maintain wells annually. So we put it into our operations and maintenance budget. Finally, in 2026, we'll need to prepare a urban water management plan. They're required every 5 years. So those are the biggest increases overall to our operations. As far as capital improvements, we are requesting, we do have identified projects of $13.7 million for capital improvement projects, and they include designing a number of wells that need PFAS treatment, adding TCP treatment to one of our wells in the Northwest, as well as we're required to do lead and copper field verification based on the lead and copper rule that the state has enforced in 2024. Finally, within this budget, we have a $6 million project for mandatory consolidation through the state, and Mr. Matt Collin will talk a little bit more about that later in the project. We've identified the capital cost, and it should be covered with a grant funding, but we haven't obtained the grant funding yet, so that's why the revenue has not been projected, but the cost has. There is an increase in our revenue, and that's based on the 2023 five-year rate increase that was approved. This is the third year of the increase, which will increase 6%. As you are all aware, we have a hearing on June 11th to request that we modify the rate increase from 6% to 34% in this upcoming year. So upon that approval, we'll be able to adjust the revenue accordingly into 2025, 2026. As far as wastewater accomplishments, in 2024-25, we generated over 125 million gallons of tertiary water that was used at the sports complex. In addition, the Plant 2 bar screen project was complete, and one of the septage processing units were replaced at Plant 3 and is now functional, and it's had very good results. In addition, we have been continuing to upgrade our program logic unit controllers within both plants to help with automation. When you're reviewing the personnel services, the salaries have been adjusted due to the 11% increase as discussed previously. As far as the change in operations for both Plant 2 and Plant 3, there's an increase of approximately $1.8 million in electrical, and we've also included about $400,000 in our O&M for professional services. And with Public Works Capital Improvement Group, they do our design on the lift stations and the sewer lines as well as the storm drain. And so they need, at times they can't do the design in-house, so they need professional services. So we identified that and put that money into our O&M budget as well, out of our CIP. As far as the CIP for Plant 2, we're looking at replacing the septage processing unit at that location, as well as some miscellaneous improvements that need to be made on aging facilities, and funds available to do our full evaluation of Plant 2 and Plant 3 to determine upgrades and replacements at Plant 2, as well as the expansion of Plant 3 and future expansion plants in the Southwest. As far as capital improvements for Plant 3, we do have about $2 million of miscellaneous items, including H2S remediation, grit vortex gate replacement, and some biofilter fans. But no major infrastructure, no major CIPs at Plant 3 at this time. Mr. Zach Meyer talked about their CIPs within the Public Works budget. We also identify, we identify and we work with Public Works to ensure that the sewer collections and storm drain are maintained and operational, as well as the capital improvements are performed. And so we identify in our budget the cost for them to perform that work, and on both the storm drain and collections, as well as we did move about $830 million out of CIP into our operation and maintenance. Again, there was funds being expended annually as CIP projects, and really they are maintenance. There's maintenance that needs to be done on the systems every year. So we put that into the O&M budget instead of having these ongoing capital projects. So that's just a shift of monies from one place to another. So the increase in revenue is based on the Consumer Price Index of 3.4%. This was approved in 2022 with the 5-year rate increase. So we do have a small increase on the revenue, but as you are aware, we are still actively pursuing a revised 5-year rate increase that we will be discussing with council in the fall. And there we go. And finally, on the personnel, we currently have no changes to our personnel requested at this time. However, with the domestic water rate study, we did identify a few personnel to be part of that study. And so if it gets approved, we'll revisit that into next year. And prior to turning it over to Matt to talk about the consolidation project, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the budget that I've presented so far.
Thank you, Ms. Budak. Colleagues, any questions about the budget thus far? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned water sales, and so my ears perked up.
Right.
So what are we selling?
So we have the 20,000 acre feet a year that we sell to North Kern. And then earlier this year, because we have the Kern River Canal backup weir under construction, we're not able to utilize the river as much as far as recharge. So if there's funds or if there's water that we're unable to either recharge or deliver, we'll look at having some small water sales.
We have not had those yet.
We have discussed them, but we haven't finalized them. We anticipate having some water sales prior to the end of this fiscal year.
We could, I talked with Mr. Maldonado, and I thought we were going to try a sand plug there at Bellevue, where you're working on the Pioneer Weir, and so we could run water behind Riverwalk.
Yes, yes,
to the,
yes. We will still place water where we can place water, but if we have too much water that we have to be removing from the dam, or if we're exceeding our storage, and we're based on our entitlement, if we get too much water, which then impacts our storage, and we can't put it into the Pioneer or into the Riverwalk area because we have too much, we're going to plug every hole we can. But if we have more water that we cannot find homes for because of the construction, we may have to sell.
Is it possible also to run water east of the river weir work that's being done, and calculate so it doesn't reach that whole distance?
There's always water. So currently there's water that's going to the Callaway, and water tends to always leak through the Callaway. So it is going downstream of the Callaway to some degree, but I think it's stopping. Where's Daniel? Oh, sorry. Thanks. Golden State? Yeah, so it's going to about Golden State. So
we could run more water there?
Yes, that's an option.
it's an option.
We have to weigh the risk. Something we're sending budget.
Right, but we know how much water we can put in, how much percolates. We could run more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. And next we go to Councilmember Coleman. I'm going to need to step out, but before Councilmember Coleman speaks, I just wanted to acknowledge that this is National Public Works Week. across America. And thank you to all of our Public Works employees and staff for your diligent efforts, and we will celebrate at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mayor. This is on that very first financial report you gave us on, right after, it's the second slide you had, and it's a water department proposed budget. Now, is that combined with, is that the everything, or? I guess I was a little confused. Does that include the wastewater stuff or not?
Yes, that is everything that, except for Public Works operation and maintenance for sewer collections and storm drain. That's not in the expenditures. They keep the expenditures underneath their O&M, and that's why we show that we're removing revenue to cover those expenditures. That's a reduction of our revenue.
Okay. All right. So the question I had really was regarding the capital projects, because you had 29,645,000 in capital projects, but the when Public Works was up, they had $4.5 million in capital improvement project dedicated to wastewater treatment. Can you tell me what that's about?
So they had 4 million and they had 3 million. And that basically would be under wastewater. If you look at the capital improvement projects right here for 7.5 million, that's their two totals together.
I see.
And so that would be, I don't have all the list with me, but it's going to be associated with any of the lift stations. I believe that there's design for the BV trunk line, as well as any storm drain projects, or just the two storm drain projects. Yes, I can get that list for you, but and that's.
I don't need to know what the projects are for. I just
Yes.
wanted to make sure that the money was accounted for.
It is, yes.
You can leave that slide up, because my next question had to do with this slide and the second slide that we were talking about. Because in both of these, you show a deficit, but I don't know, you have, on the second slide, which is right after you start your presentation, you had $117 million in expenditures and you had $89 million in revenue. So where's the $28 million balance coming from?
So the balance will have to come from fund balance, the rate increase, if it's approved on June 11th to go from 6% to 34%, and the future rate increase for sewer. It's difficult to not show that we have a deficit when we are asking for a rate increase. And that's been the challenge with presenting, is we have to identify our need, and our need is 117 million. However, our revenue is 89 million. And so with the rate increase and the adjustments as we move forward, but in the interim, we will either utilize fund balance, or we will have further meetings with finance to determine if we have to phase the projects. So we've identified everything that has been brought forward. That's part of our rate increase analysis. And if finance is concerned about our funding on CIP, we will make adjustments under CIP.
So then you would just stage your capital projects?
Yes.
To make that, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I have no further questions.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Matt so he can talk about the mandatory consolidation.
Thank you, Chris.
Mr. Collum. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. Well, let me just get my bearings here. Okay. All right, council members, good afternoon. My name is Matthew Collum. I'm the Deputy City Attorney assigned to Water. And today I'm going to brief you on an element of Water's budget that pertains to a project that's immediately south of the city. This presentation, I think, is necessary because the project is separate and somewhat unique from the other capital improvement projects that are listed in the Water Department budget. The project at issue, however, is the mandatory consolidation of the Old River Mutual Water Company and the South Kern Mutual Water Company with the City of Bakersfield's municipal water system. It's a bit of a mouthful. And what you're going to see here is also a bit of an abbreviated presentation from the brief that I gave to the Water Board on April 23rd. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, this slide right here is meant really to orient the council to where the project is taking place. As you can probably surmise, the blue, or rather the green, marks the city limits of the city. And the area we're going to talk about here is the intersection of Taft Highway and Old River, as you can see circled right there. So again, it's in the southwest of the city, I believe south of Councilmember Coleman's ward. Now, this is a closer view of the area at issue. Again, you're looking at the top of the screen is the north, then the bottom is the south, your right is the east, and then your left is the west. Again, this is Taft Highway and Old River. And what you're looking at right here, this red area here, is the Old River Mutual Water Company. That thumbtack to the north of that title there, that is actually pointing out a groundwater well, the single groundwater well that they rely upon. And here's some pertinent facts about the Old River Mutual Water Company. There's about 14 service connections servicing about 50 individuals. Again, it utilizes that single well, and it's been doing so since 1962. It's been basically in constant use since then. What's important here, though, is that from 2011 until at least 2023, the Old River Mutual Water Company has consistently failed to provide water beneath the maximum contamination limit for uranium. And from 2020 until at least 2023, the same thing has been occurring with regard to TCP. Now, the Old River Mutual Water Company also serves a disadvantaged community. As you can see there, at least from the 2019 numbers, they have a median household income a little over 40 grand a year. Now, our second mutual here is South Kern, immediately to the south of Old River. Its well is right there to the extreme northeast. It's marked there in that somewhat darker thumbtack. And again, some of the same pertinent facts here. You have about 32 individuals, approximately, being serviced through 15 service connections. This well, again, is from 1959, again, been in continuous service since then. And just like Old River, South Kern had some real issues with providing drinking water without uranium and without TCP. Again, this is also a disadvantaged community. As of 2019, you're looking at a median household income about $31,500. Both of these mutuals, however, are largely defunct, and I'll get into this, how this is working. But I just wanted to show you what we're looking at right now, and right now what I want to tell you is how we got here. So let's touch on that. So the legislation that empowered the State Water Resources Control Board to compel these mandatory consolidations was brought about in 2015. Governor Jerry Brown signed Senate Bill 88, putting into effect this legislation. Now, what this legislation authorized the State Water Resources Control Board to do is to require systems that consistently fail to provide safe drinking water to be consolidated or obtain service from a functional public water system. So as I showed you in that previous slide, both Old River and South Kern, with regard to uranium and TCP, for a number of years, have consistently failed to provide that safe drinking water to their service areas. Now, SB 88 empowers the Water Resources Control Board to utilize a process compelling consolidation. It starts with a voluntary consolidation effort, and if that fails, it moves on to a mandatory consolidation effort. Now, that process has played out from November 2015 really to February of 2019. So let me walk you through some of this. So between November of 2015 and February of 2019, the Water Resources Control Board, they encouraged those voluntary consolidations between the mutuals and the city. But following the process established by SB 88, the board then ordered those mandatory consolidations to take place. Now, city did oppose these mandatory consolidations, and I believe it was in October of 2018 A little bit before my time, we brought these, the city filed a petition for reconsideration with the board. And in February of 2019, the board ruled against the city's petition. So that was really our legal remedy here to try to oppose this. However, the State Water Resources Control Board has said it's going to move forward. And the city really, we did not have a compelling basis to appeal. So we let it sit, and we've been moving forward since then. Now, from 2019 until present, and that's the reason these logos are up here, there's been a variety of entities that have assisted the mutuals in helping this consolidation take place. So Provost and Pritchard, there on the left, they are the administrator of both mutuals at this point. In essence, they are, well, for all intents and purposes, they are running the mutuals. And again, it's because those mutuals, they lack the technical, managerial, financial resources to do this on their own. You also have Corollo, which is an engineering firm, and Helix, which is doing the environmental work, mostly CEQA. What's important here, and I'll touch on the finances in a second, is that all of the bills that are coming out of Provost, Corollo, and Helix, they are paid for by Sacramento. It is not being paid for by the city. So let me get into the details here of some of the finances. Again, I just want to reiterate that at this point, the city has not sustained any significant financial costs related to this project. The costs it has sustained are primarily limited to, I won't even say primarily, they are only limited to staff time. Our engineering staff that work at Water, they do coordinate with Corollo from time to time and review plans and as things are moving forward, but the bulk of that work is being performed by the state. However, and this is really kind of where the metal, or really where the rubber meets the road here, the city will be responsible for fronting approximately $7.7 million to pay for the actual construction of the infrastructure necessary to consolidate, knit in, tie in these mutuals with the city's water system. Now, I do want to be clear, however, that the state will reimburse the city for the funds expended during the construction of this project. However, it is contingent on the city being able to provide an approved environmental document. Now, to that end, there has been a mitigated negative declaration that was prepared by Helix. We at Water have coordinated with planning. We have brought that up for public comment on, I believe it was April 9th of this year. That comment period ended on May 9th. We did not receive any comments. So at this point, it is now no longer a draft MND. It is a final MND. We intend to bring that in front of the Planning Commission on June 5th. We will be bringing, assuming that it is approved by the Planning Commission, we will be bringing that in front of the council either later in June or perhaps in July. Again, if that is approved, if the council says that the MND is good to go, the city will then be able to enter into a grant agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board, whereby the State Water Resources Control Board will eventually pay us back, right? We will front those costs, but we will be able to forward the invoices and the costs of everything that we expend here to then have Sacramento reimburse us. Now, I do have to tell you this, just because it's my duty as an attorney here. Anytime you go into any of these grants, there will always be language in those grants that says that if the finances, well, it'll say something to this effect, that if the finances in Sacramento can't support this project, you're not going to get paid. However, we as the city would still be on the hook to ensure that the consolidation went forward. I can't tell you what the risk is on that yet. I don't know. But if I do get any indicators on that, I will, of course, move that up the chain of command to make sure you are all properly informed of that. Now, one other thing. While the state, if all goes well, would reimburse the city for its costs for actually tying these systems in, they will not assist us with operating and management costs, or operation and maintenance costs, excuse me, O&M. That will fall on us. That will fall on the city. I do have here our last bullet, though, that failure to consolidate may result in monetary fines at about $1,000 a day. Full disclosure, we here at Water and in my dealings with the State Water Resources Control Board on this project, we have a good relationship with them. We're moving forward as quickly as we can, and so are they. They fully understand what our processes are. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is I don't feel any real pressure from the State Water Resources Control Board with regard to this at the moment, but I need the council obviously to know that it is out there. Again, if I see any change in that, I will make sure that the council's kept aware of it. And with that, if there are any questions, I am happy to answer them regarding this consolidation.
Thank you, Mr. Cullum. Any questions? Mr. Mastertash.
Fees collected, do those stay with the companies? Where does that go?
So regarding fees as in water...
For those municipalities, those little tiny, yeah.
Right. So one of the interesting things here, right? So again, this is outside the city limits. So there's another layer of complexity here. The short answer is no. Currently, those fees would not be coming back into the city. If there is an annexation of this area, then yes, that would occur. But to answer your question right now, Councilmember, no, they would not.
Okay, thank you. Is there a reason we wouldn't try to annex this before we did this? Is there a reason this is a city issue, not a county issue?
Thank you, council member, and happy to have Ginny or Matt weigh in as well. No, there's not a reason not to pursue annexation. Our preference would be, any area that we provide services to should be annexed. That's one of our points of frustration with this law from the state, is they can force these consolidations, whereas typically we don't offer will serve letters and serve folks unless they annex, and this is an exception to that. But there aren't any policy reasons not to make that attempt.
Councilmember Bashir Tash, the owners of those properties do not want to be annexed. And so that is the reason they are not being annexed. I happen to think that it was incorrect for the State Water Resources Control Board to do what it did, because we have a law right on point in the government code that says you're not supposed to supply city services outside your municipal area. However, with the fines that are coming, that could be coming into reality, it's not something that we can, hide our head in the sand. So we're moving forward. But again, under the presentation, we're going to have to front those costs.
Has there been conversations with the county in helping? I mean, I don't understand why we would be on the hook for that and not the county.
I don't either.
We'll take that as good feedback to have more of those conversations.
Councilmember Coleman?
No, I just have a question.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, sir. So what is the thresholds for forcing us to move forward with taking on these two water districts?
Well, it's my understanding that it's with the legislation that was passed, as Mr. Colum indicated in his first slide. I don't think there's necessarily an MCL threshold. It's just that it was disadvantaged, and they were above the MCLs on both of those elements, uranium and TCP.
And 123 TCP. Part of why the city is on the hook for this is that we are the functioning public water system that is nearest to these service areas. So because of that, we're the ones that are first on the list. If you look at the map, and perhaps I should have brought a better one here that kind of showed more, there really isn't a public water system that's available as an alternative to either Old River or South Kern. It's really just the city, and that's why the state has been so keen, in my opinion, to tie these mutuals into our system and not another one which is further from it.
And again, I think it is interesting that they're requiring it to be a public system as opposed to Cal Water.
Right.
And we have tried that option, and I don't think that Water Department staff is in favor of that, and I don't know how far up the ladder it went with Cal Water. But the state is clearly wanting us, the city, to be the leader here.
So any failing well adjacent to city water infrastructure that is in a disadvantaged community could be forced upon us in the future.
I don't want to say any. We're only aware of this one right now. Could that legislation possibly get extended out? Again, with the state, anything's possible. It's not just disadvantage, but again, it's an MCL, maximum contamination limit.
And in this instance, with both South Current and Old River, if you look at the consolidation orders, it runs through the timeline for I'll call it the regulatory lapses with the MCLs. These were running annual averages. So you had 4 different times taken over the course of a year, once a quarter, that showed that the well was consistently failing. So a single instance may not be enough, but you start getting to 2, you get to 3 and 4, you're going to be on the State Water Resources Control Boards. You're going to be on the radar at that point. So to answer your question, I don't think that one instance is enough, but if it becomes a pattern, it could be.
Okay. And then plan or strategy to front the money?
Ms. Budak, if you could speak to that item.
So we do have identified in our project as our project costs. We are actively working with Department of Finance, and they've identified an expedited grant funding. And so we are actually in the process right now of completing the application, and they want us to move forward with the application and take a resolution to council in July so that they can guarantee us that funding. We had a lot of questions about it because we're like, well, we're only at 30% design. Caltrans hasn't reviewed the plans. We have a lot of, we have to go underneath one of the current Delta canals. And they said, it's just an estimate. And as you get design and cost estimates, they will increase the amount of the grant. You just have to continue to go back. So we are being optimistic that we will obtain the necessary grant funding to be able to install the line. It is a 1-mile connection from McCutcheon down to Taft Highway, but our city is also growing from, Ash to Gosford towards Old River. So hopefully over the next few years, we actually get the looped system as our city continues to grow to the west. But for now, it should be a fully funded project through the state to do that 1-mile connection from McCutcheon down to these 2 mutuals.
And how far do you have to come down to connect?
Sorry, it's 1 mile.
Sorry,
Yeah.
1 mile.
1 mile, yeah,
Thank
1
you.
mile line, yeah.
And again, I don't want to disagree with Ms. Budak, but it's very clear. We, the city, must front the money. It's not, we're going to sit and wait for the grant money to get into our checking account and then write the check. We write the check, we fund, and hopefully the state has the money, and hopefully we get reimbursed. I would not be using the word guarantee. I think we should keep positive thoughts, and we're cautiously optimistic. But at the end of the day, our budget should contain the $7+ million in order to do that, because if we do not, we're on the hook for the sanctions. And I'm pretty sure that the grant money's not going to reimburse us for the sanctions. So we just have to, again, plan for that type of upfront capital costs.
In addition to the capital costs, do we have any early estimates of what operations
We have not.
would add?
We haven't. Once they're connected into the system, they should then it should be a meter to each home, and the meter should be billed based on use and the ready to serve. So they will pay, or they will be billed for the water that's provided once the connection occurs. Again, there's some concerns about they've always been flat rate, or they haven't had a water bill, and so there may be some adjustments that have to be accounted for with that.
Got it. Thank you.
So-
Seems like there was some conversation at Water Board about future annexations and opportunity of forced annexation at some point.
We thought at one time, Councilmember Smith, that this area may be substantially surrounded, and because it was substantially surrounded, we may be able to go to LAFCO with that. I think we had come to the conclusion that that was not necessarily the case at this particular point in time, but we're keeping our eye on it along with the city manager's office, since annexation of island areas is a council goal. But at this particular time, we have exhausted that option.
Okay, thank you. No more questions? Thank you.
Thank you, council members.
City manager is now going to give us a summary of capital improvement projects.
Well stated, council member. As that's coming up, just a reminder to the council that we this year approached the budget process slightly differently in that we knew we would have more limitations on some of our one-time resources, and that we were going to do our best as staff to recommend those that we felt were the most critical, but have some options for council for some of those more discretionary capital improvement projects. At this point, with our balanced budget, we have $5.4 million available in the capital outlay fund. That's our general fund, capital fund, and $7.9 million available in the PSVS for capital funding. It's important to note that the entire CIP, of course, we're not talking about SB1 projects and gas tax projects and all of those utility enterprise. They're not summarized here. These are really your discretionary projects. The entire CIP is, $70, $80 million. That might be even a little bit low. $83 million. But we're talking about this portion of the discretionary CIP. So there are some projects that we have recommended as staff, saying we really think these projects should happen, that are a portion of the total funding. And on the capital outlay side, typically our capital outlay is the fund that we maintain city facilities, that we help supplement some of our road projects. This is our basic core capital program. And so we have recommended a majority of that program, first with street resurfacing, a larger number. In recent years, we've done $2.5 million. I recommended that we bring forward $2 million, and there is an optional item that you'll see later to bump that back up to 2.5. We felt like at $2 million, we're not losing too much ground, but if you go below $2 million, I think you really start to lose ground in our pavement condition. We packaged up or overly summarized this next item where we have $1.4 million in projects, but these are a series of small projects. We have mostly somewhere between $50,000 and $400,000 in a series of projects, the largest being a roof repair, $400,000. We have the typical repairs to streetlights, traffic signals, some limited curb gutter sidewalks, putting funding in for the block walls. This is, again, repairing HVACs, in city facilities that are beyond their useful life. And so there's a series of those typical capital projects that we're recommending move forward just to keep up with deferred maintenance. And then lastly, we do have a project that on the 58 and 99 to do the landscaping and hardscaping for one of those sections of that interchange, and Caltrans has made a commitment to do half, and the 1.25 is our half. So again, that was a project that was budgeted last year. We knew it wasn't going to move forward because we're still working on 7th and 8th movements, and so we delayed it from this year to address the funding issue with the county tax remittance issue, knowing that we would need to come back this year, and we are recommending as staff that we fund that again to keep our commitment with Caltrans. And so of that total, over just $5 million, we are recommending $4.7 million in specific projects for council consideration. On the PSVS side of things, we're actually recommending a much smaller total as, sort of the core set of projects. The park amenities and renovation improvements account has been a really important account in the last few years. This is how we've been able to do the gates at the parks, and when there's a new paint job needed, or to repair one of the spray parks, or to put up a new canopy, or to update a small sports courts issue. It's all been coming out of the PARI account. And so we've been able to do a lot of really good projects out of this account. In the last couple of years, we've funded it at $1 million. And given some of the tighter, budget scenario, we're recommending half of that this year. But one of the council options is to actually bump that back up to a higher amount based on how you decide your other priorities. The next one, Wilson Park. Wilson Park has actually been delayed for 2 years now. It was a contingent project 2 years ago, and then we didn't fund it over this last year. And so one of the reasons we're recommending it is just as one of those projects that's been longest on the deferred list. And then the third item is we have 5 different projects. We have one project in the police department that when it rains, water gets down a stairwell and there's flooding in the basement. We can do better than that. And we have an awning and some other improvements that are going to direct that water out, into an area where it can go away through our, stormwater collection system. And then we have just some smaller issues in some of our fire departments where we have a roof that needs repair. We have 2 sewer line issues that need repair. And we also have a bathroom that needs repairs. And then we have 2 generators that are not working properly. And, we just need to take care of, again, some of that deferred maintenance. This totals only 1.2 of the full, $7+ million, leaving more of those optional options on the PSVS side of things. So I'm going to go through some lists, and this probably is a lot of information. If you look at the very last, and I'm not encouraging you to get too far ahead of me, but there is a slide at the very end that has all these projects in one place, but wanted to at least package them up into buckets that made sense for us. On the capital outlay portion, there's about $685,000 still remaining. And there's just these 4 items that we're suggesting as potential items. To do additional street resurfacing, the disadvantaged neighborhoods, alley and street, we've done that for several years and caught up a lot in some of the areas where we don't have alleys paved or streets that are in bad condition. We made that an optional item for this year. Jefferson School, we've done some safety improvements near that school, but some a little more intensive safety improvements have been planned there, and this would make a bigger impact in some of their safe routes, as well as in recent years, we've also done small allocations to help us address fencing challenges along many of our canals throughout the city. So these are, again, some of those options to spend the rest of that $685,000. And I think we can come back and have discussion there, but first wanted to just cycle through the public safety vital services tax pieces. So there is $6.5 million as proposed. Of course, council could also give a different direction to staff based on some of our recommended projects, but what you'll see in the next several slides are options for how to spend the remaining $6.5 million in one-time funds. Could be another allocation to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And you'll note on some of these projects that it has contingent in parens after it. We've done this for our newer council members. In prior years, we've called several projects contingent, that we don't start on them until we get to mid-year and see where our revenues are at and how is the budget looking. And so we would hold off on moving forward on those until we got to mid-year. And not this year, but last year, we had several contingent projects that we did hold off on moving forward on and recaptured those savings. The second item, the Open Door Network, of course, is building their new shelter site, going from 500 beds to 600 beds total. It's a large project, and they're getting other funding and financing from a variety of sources. They had approached the city for $5 million in support. Last year, we did a $2.5 million allocation out of ARPA funding. And so this is a consideration for council to do a second phase, and that would, I would argue, represent sort of the full possible commitment there. Again, from the same overall bucket, we have a pedestrian bridge project that's been under environmental review and going to move forward, or this would be enough to move forward with a full engineered design of that project. The urban redevelopment property purchase, every year we have, not every year, but over the last 4 years, we've set aside funding to make purchases of blighted properties or challenged properties and helped to take key focus corridors in our urban core to turn those around. For example, we bought several properties on Baker Street to get them into city control to do some redevelopment on Baker Street. To balance the budget, we removed that $1.2 million allocation that has been made in prior years, but this is an opportunity to, for council to take a portion or that entire number to put back into a CIP budget. We've made several allocations in recent years to a downtown redevelopment fund, which has helped to offset some of our large construction projects and CIP projects in downtown. The grant match fund, again, more in particular for our newer council members, we've had this for the last 2 years in a row that allows us to go after really large grants and know that we've got some grant match set aside. We've used our grant match to probably, stretch our dollars out, in some instances 5 to 1, and in some instances 10 to 1. By having that small cash match, it's allowed us to be eligible for some really large construction grants. Also, in the last couple of years, we've had some funding set aside for multimodal demonstration projects, and then street lighting as a original priority of PSVS. We were putting $1 million a year into street lighting. This year, again, I recommended that we just reduce it to make space for the many priorities that are possible there. But that's just a potential number. Council could say $250, $500, $1 million for street lighting as well. One of the reasons we use that number is that we have some fund balance remaining in our street lighting allocations from prior years. We have a long list of projects that are pending and we're working towards, but there is some fund balance we're still spending down for streetlights. This next section is a little more on the parks side of things. Anton Giovanni Park, we noted as in design. This would not represent a full park build out. That is a 16-acre site. And right now, at $1 million per acre as an average number for a full development of a park, that would be a very large project. What this represents is enough funding to put a grass area that would be about 3 acres in size. It would put in irrigation and grass and address some of the basic drainage and grading needs to put 3 acres of grass at Anton Giovanni Park as a start towards the ultimate build out of that park. Centennial Park was a contingent project from last year. We held off on it. And then we have done some emergency repairs at Centennial Park. Well, we've budgeted for emergency repairs of the tennis courts there, but this is just one of the next parks on the list for replacement of some of the amenities in that park. And as I noted earlier, this is the PARI account. We could put additional funding into the PARI account. Mr. Budak mentioned earlier that we have funding for the design of Anton Giovanni. One other undeveloped park we have funding for from a mid-year action you recently took. But then this would be an option to put into design a third of our undeveloped parks. I believe that if we did more than 3, it would be beyond, frankly, our capacity to really, get serious about those. But I do think having Anton Giovanni partway down the path and then 2 more, it's going to probably take several years still, 2 to potentially 3 years, depending if we get other grant funding or earmarks, to get enough funds to fully build out those parks. So I wouldn't recommend more than 3, but I think having 3 in queue does allow us to have shovel-ready projects. And then lastly, as we talked about our land use alternatives and the heat island effect, this council had talked about enhancing our tree canopy. again, that is just a number. It could go up or down, but one of the options for council is to put in funding for us to continue to put more trees throughout our city landscaping areas. And then these are two that I put together because they're both for other outside entities. That Get Bus has talked about doing a downtown circulator, and this would allow for purchase of the bus for that. I would not recommend that the city get into a position where we would be operating, but at council request included these two items for consideration. And the second one is the Greenfield Walking Group has been a community-based organization that's done a lot of work without a real space to carry forward that work, and this would be funding that would allow them to pursue an actual home or facility for their CBO operations. So the last piece here is we actually have a few projects that are also what I would call recurring operating. We don't call them ongoing because they're contractual. They're not 100% forever commitments. But these are operating costs. But the way that we would be able to make space for these would be from the same $7 million that's available for PSVS. There's slight amounts there that are operating that I think we could probably pick two of these projects and not have major ongoing impacts, but I would be reluctant to recommend all of them. The real reason that they're on this list is that these have been things that we had either been funding in the past or were considering funding that are operating that we removed from the budget in order to balance the budget. And so we've had a community connectors pilot that's cost us about $300,000. It's been working well, but it's something new and it hasn't been locked into the budget, and so we put it out as an option for council to consider. The next two are projects that these are contracts with flood ministries that have had homeless outreach teams, 2 different teams. We have a number of other teams. We have had 6 teams total for flood. These are 2 contracts that expire at the end of June, and so we are putting it forward that these are options, again, to remove in order to balance the budget, but if there's a strong sense from council to put those flood services back in, that would be one of your options in spending down the available funds. The last 2 are projects that were around, again, also homelessness. The county had been planning to make an expansion of their safe camp, almost a doubling of size, but it was a challenge from an operating standpoint. When the city set aside monies last year to expand the number of emergency shelter beds, we spent a portion of that, $700,000, for 50 additional beds at Brundage Lane Navigation Center. The remaining funding that we had left would have been sufficient to fund that expansion of the county safe camp. As we again just see our budget tightening up a little bit and wanting to be strategic, it's a choice now for your council to decide, do you spend those dollars in other places or continue to pursue additional beds at the safe camp? And then lastly, St. Vincent de Paul, we've actually done a capital project to help them refurbish their facility. This proposal was the amount of funding that would allow them to extend their hours beyond the early afternoon and to have an evening meal to keep more folks sort of occupied and served for longer hours. But this is this would be an annual operating cost of $500,000 if we did support over time that extension of their service hours. So with that, let me click to this slide. I know it's a lot, but wanted you to at least have everything and you have it in front of you on a full page sheet. The box in the bottom right those are the operating or recurring operating costs, which again, I wouldn't recommend more than 2 of those. But then you've got the rest of the list of CIPs that that roughly has about $6.5 million available in funding. Now today, we're not making motions and votes on which projects to pick. That will be in your proposed budget in June, but wanted to have this is really one of the key decision points of council in that discretionary amount of CIP funding, and am open to questions and individual council feedback related to these to inform staff ultimately putting together your final budget for June 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. I have a couple questions. Just to clarify, one of the first slides talked about 5.4 million and the 7.8 million PSVS. And then you settled in on the 6.6 million that we're actually making decisions on, or where's our
council gets to decide
yeah,
all of it,
right,
council
all
member.
of it. All
No, but I will
400
say,
million.
if I can go back to a couple of the slides that you're mentioning. So this original slide, that's the total funding available for both capital outlay and PSVS. There's a small list here of projects that on the capital outlay side, we're saying we strongly recommend these projects be in, but council could say, nope, they're out, in lieu of some of the other projects that are on the last slide, or frankly, other projects that even aren't listed there. But this is where staff is saying, hey, if we don't do this deferred maintenance type work, we're going to fall behind on city facilities. And so that only leaves a small portion here of about $600,000 on what's the slide on the screen right now for the capital outlay fund. Whereas on PSVS, I'm going to go back one slide, we are only recommending about 1.2 million out of the $7+ million. And that's where you get to that number of just, the 6 million, and I'm already forgetting the available, $6.6 million in PSVS is what's available outside of what staff recommended as key items to include in PSVS. But council can decide on the full,
I think I'm with you now.
Yeah, okay.
So I guess my first question was the $2 million for streets. Does that include like our portion on federal and state money, or that's just, we want to do it?
That's just additional local funding to do more street repaving. That's just our additional street resurfacing every year that we add to the state and federal, funding that we get.
Okay. And this is just a comment I was going to make and didn't on the Parks Department. The gates that they've put in at various parks have been a great addition to the parks, and the evening quiet. I live right behind Air Park, and it's, been a lot of fun for the teenagers over the years, and it's quieted down quite a bit. So the street lighting, that was part of your recommendation? Or that's part of the flex, I'm sorry.
That's part of the flex, yes, street lighting. There's some limited dollars for traffic light improvements and maybe damaged street lights from cars hitting them, but to put new street lights in, that's the flex.
And the eighth movement, you talked about the landscaping at 5899, and the eighth movement's not going to be done for quite some time, but that landscaping goes in immediately, or we have to fund it immediately, or we're...
I am not sure, council member. Mr. Archer.
Mr. Archer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Paul Archer, Public Works. So the 5899 interchange landscaping, the city manager was correct. Caltrans is contributing a portion. The city is contributing more. We can put it in basically at any time. We're going through the approval process with Caltrans right now to complete design so that we can install that. This is additional dollars that will get us that landscaping involved. But in terms of the time frame, it doesn't have to occur with eighth movement or with seventh movement. It can go whenever we want. So
those that construction does not affect this landscaping.
Correct. Correct. We are not anywhere in the area of eighth movement.
Okay, great. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple, I was having trouble following what you were asking about too, and I kind of did the math, and I kind of figured out how you were laying that out. And these are no particular priority order, but I went out to Wilson Park when I saw this $475,000 on here back when you submitted it to PSVS, and I guess we're not opining at this point on what we're going to accept or not, but to me, the sport court refinishing was not the biggest issue at that park. The biggest issue at that park is the rundown bathrooms, and I don't know what our thoughts are regarding that, but I guess I struggle with the items that are out of PSVS. Literally none of the recommendations other than fixing the roof or fixing the drainage problem at the police station is being, none of these monies from PSVS are really addressing police and fire. And I'm struggling with that a little bit. Are you saying that there's a future meeting where we're going to be able to go down this list and have a discussion about how we feel about each issue, or how's this going to roll out?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. So the presentation today was intended to collect some feedback from council, and so while you're not taking a vote, you can share your feedback on these projects and ask questions. I also anticipate on our next city council meeting, which is May 28th, to have a workshop that further refines the budget, so that I'm not going to put a list of options out for you in June, because that's very late in the process to be making lots of moves. And so come May 28th, I'd like to really, pin down what we're going to put in the proposed budget so the public in the public hearing can respond to what is the proposed budget. So you have today for some feedback, as well as the 28th.
This is your opportunity.
Well, I'll say first of all that under the PSVS capital outlay project, additional recurring operating cost. I've been opposed to recurring operating cost under PSVS since I was on the Measure N committee. So I struggle with it at a time when we have some shortfalls in some other areas, agreeing to any additional recurring cost to Measure N, especially since that out of $114 million, that we're only going to have $8 million or $7.5 million discretionary anyway. So that percentage is really hacking away at what we have available. So I would struggle supporting anything that's regarding recurring operating costs being attached to Measure N. And then specifically with the general fund outlays, with the other things we've been considering, I'm just struggling with any of it. You had 4.7 million recommended subtotal, which had 2 million in streets, 1.5 million in fixing the roofs and that kind of thing, and then the landscaping. I just see us needing to be able to be more prudent about how we spend our money. So I would struggle with supporting any of those, to be honest with you.
If I may, council member, I forgot to make a comment earlier, that it's also an option to not spend at all. Council absolutely can say, let's not do all those projects. Now, Let me just say a little bit more about the process that we used. So we asked departments to submit their budget proposals, and they submit a number of, requests. And then as a budget team initially, and then myself and our sort of our executive team narrow down those requests. And, even in prior years where we've had, more one-time funding, there's always more requests, and we say, thank you, but no thank you. Or, we're gonna base on what we understand the council priorities as established. And so what we've brought forward is, in some projects that we, again, feel are really important just from a maintenance standpoint, a few projects that are reflective of council strategic priorities as established by the whole council in workshop, and then a few projects as requested by council members to just include in consideration. But I think that there is wisdom in council saying we don't have to spend all the one-time money.
Okay. All right. I'll save my other further comments or questions for another time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Coleman. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to start by sharing that I think that there's a whole other half to public safety vital services, and it's the vital services component that allows and enables us to be able to make strategic investments in things other than police and fire. The reason why we've been able to add the 63rd park to the city of Bakersfield at Linnell Brahma is in large, that one was grant funded. But I'll pick another example. Park rangers who keep our parks safe, and I would argue have been one of the best investments that this council has made to keep our parks safe is because of public safety vital services measure. I'm reminded of the days when we would do the point in time count before Measure N really started to have an effect on our community. And I remember getting a call from city staff letting me know the night before that they weren't going to clear MLK Park, which was where I was supposed to go and count the homeless, and that I needed to prepare myself mentally for what I was about to see. And there were more than 25 homeless encampments in MLK Park. And I was shocked. We didn't even finish the park itself by sunup. And I am so grateful that it is no longer in my ward, but my heart is still there. I am so grateful today that is not the case. If you were to go at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning at MLK Park, it is not the case. And it is in large part because of serious investments of this council to invest in our park rangers, to fortify those structures, and to make strategic investments throughout the city that go above and beyond just police and fire. So I wanted to start there. But the reality is that we are currently prepared to transfer in $11.9 million from PSVS into the general fund, which is a structural budgetary issue. We have not done it to this extent, but it is now time for this council, I would argue, to take serious action to address both the root causes of this concern, which is the inflation that is taking place in our general fund, at the same time making sure that we are doing what we can to reduce what we're transferring in from PSVS. I would prefer that there's a magic wand and we could say, let's not transfer in any PSVS money. Is that the reality that we're living in today? I'm not exactly sure. But I think that we can take some very serious steps to make that happen. I think the same thing of TOT. Our transient occupancy tax, we're looking at transferring in $4 million into our general fund to offset, again, some of the inflation that's taking place there. And it's not sustainable. And we've been able to work around it for the past couple of years, but it's time that we address those issues. And so I truly think that we are at a point where we can make a proactive approach and take the cuts today so that we can have a brighter future for tomorrow. And I think that we're still in a position where we aren't necessarily in dire straits, but we could put ourselves in a very strong position financially into the future. I had a special opportunity to talk with Randy and Robert, I believe was his name, late last week about the budget. And there are some very serious concerns, not just about this year, but headed into future years as well. And so as it relates to this conversation, I think we have to maintain the minimum standard. We can't have leaky roofs. We can't have facilities for our firefighters where they are working in 110-degree temperatures outside, going to fires and then coming back to a station that does not have a functioning HVAC unit. I also think that we made a commitment to the Open Door Network to make sure that we can do our part in keeping their facility or expanding their facility so that they can continue to provide homeless support services. I think that that is absolutely crucial. And lastly, going back to my example about our parks, the PARI account has a very special place in my heart. It is the sole reason why, back when Rick was running the Parks Department, was able to address immediate concerns, whether that be a replacement of bathroom stall, or just addressing really anything that's occurring in the park. I think that including that in the initial round of the budget would be great. By my calculation, that's 1.7 for deferred maintenance of facilities, 2.5 for the Open Door Network, and then 500,000 for the PARI account. That's significantly less than what's been proposed, and I think that it's time that we, especially given the federal circumstances and the state's budget shortfall, we push this to at least 6 months or 12 months for further evaluation of the rest of the projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Bashir Tosh.
I have a lot of notes, a lot of stuff I wrote down. I apologize as I formulate my thoughts. I just wanted to start with the fact that we have commitments to some organizations and stuff out here, but first and foremost, our commitments are to our constituents, our taxpayers, more than they are to businesses or nonprofits. The people, they elected us and we represent them. Our expenses are greater than our revenues. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay. I noticed with all of the cutbacks in looking and reviewing all the different budgets, most of the cutbacks occurred at like the project level, and that's, I appreciate the cutbacks and what they are, that the personnel stayed the same and went up across the board, and it's going to continue to go up every year and every year and every year. And so we'll have a bunch of departments with a lot of people that don't have a budget to actually do anything, is what we've been presented with. I don't think that's fair to the people at all, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for taxpayers. They're not going to understand that. I think there's a lot more deferred maintenance on here than what we're kind of being proposed for the discretionary different projects and that kind of stuff. And I think that we focus in more on deferred maintenance and saving what we can, and also encouraging how we can cut back, not necessarily projects, but maybe some of the inflated departments in light of not having things to do, personnel. Allocating resources to actually getting stuff done, I think, is where we'll make a big win. And then in regards to PSVS, I mean, that's still something that could potentially go away, right? That's something that could be undone.
I would argue even other funding sources could be undone, yes. I mean, any funding source could be undone.
And I would say that, it's gotten to this point, adopting different recommendations, but at the end of the day, all of those decisions have been passed and done at a council level. And this isn't new. This isn't something that we've just been confronted. This has been something that's been building momentum into this point where now it's in front of everyone's face. But we have the ability to course correct and make better recommendations to save our city financially and allocate resources in the right direction, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's it. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have to go through this and do my pick and choose and I guess overall big picture direction, but I did want to respond. Councilmember Coleman mentioned $2 million for street that he would not recommend, and I would just state that again is deferred maintenance, and the longer you wait to repave a street, it gets exponentially more expensive. And I also would reinforce the idea that public safety and vital services, PSVS, is not just police and fire. We've had a big reduction in our homicides, and that has come from grant opportunities to nonprofits working with the community and money spent that is not directly sworn officers on the street, but a reduction in people being killed. And the same with traffic calming. We had people here at the last meeting, they want traffic calming to save lives. And that's not hiring more police or fire, that's calming streets with various treatments. And so I just reinforce it. It's not only about hiring police and fire, but, and I don't know, expenses greater than revenues. I mean, the wish list is always greater, but.
I appreciate the opportunity, Councilmember Smith, because I just wanted to give a succinct, direct answer on the question. We, of course, have one-time savings that we're spending for some of our CIP projects. And so if we adopt, for example, PSVS, if we adopt a budget of $114 million, we're spending more than what we expect to get in revenues for that single year. But also, I have a responsibility always on the operating side to bring forward a budget that is balanced. And so you have a balanced budget that is proposed for the council. It requires spending some of our TOT funds and PSVS funds on general fund costs, but you have a balanced budget, and I will never bring you a budget that is not balanced.
Okay. I just, there's other arguments there. But I would say, that maybe we have overshot as we've built up since PSVS. And if it becomes clear that now is the time to scale back or stop or, whatever the answer is, it's not too late and it's a good time. So, think hard about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Bashir Tosh.
I just had a quick question, Mr. Clegg. How many years going forward would we be able to sustain the deficit between our expenses and our revenues being filled with the fund balance and whatever savings we've accumulated? When are we going to run out?
You probably won't like the answer of it. It depends. But I believe, let me put it this way. This year, we had a $20 million increase in non-discretionary expenses, and we had a revenues increase of probably $3 million. Next year, if we saw another $20 million increase in non-discretionary expenses, we wouldn't have enough ongoing revenues to pay for all of that. We've already made some structural reductions to the budget to balance this year. And I think we need to make some structural adjustments to the budget to stay ahead of next year.
So potentially a year.
Correct.
And the biggest portion of those non-discretionary funds was personnel?
Correct. And personnel-related costs.
Okay, so as personnel continues to grow, that non-discretionary is going to continue to grow, and our deficit is going to continue to grow.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's rather serious. I know that you were able to balance the budget by moving things around, but you said we won't want to hear it, but we do need to hear that, and we do need you to speak up in that area. We're looking at being responsible for the future of our city, and to be able to course correct at this point would be the prudent thing for us to do. We can't sustain it beyond next year. What happens in the years 2 and 3 going out? Where do you see us going if we don't course correct, Mr. Clegg?
Thank you, Mayor. I would actually just respond slightly differently in that we're already thinking about what are some of those costs that are driving some of these increases, and how do we adjust and influence some of those cost items. I think we've already identified some other ways to make address some of the structural balances, and so I'm thinking about in next year and the year after, what are some of those structural adjustments we can make to make sure we're balanced. But I think to answer your question more specifically, if we didn't make any adjustments, you have a couple of options. I think, of course, do you spend against the future? Do you spend against reserves? I don't recommend either of those. And so if you come to a future year where you have, less flexibility in your non-discretionary, then you have to cut more positions, more programs, more costs. And while I think restructuring is wise, you want to stay ahead of that so you're not having to make more difficult cuts down the road when you have less time and less flexibility. And so this is a good time to make some of those adjustments. I would also suggest to the council, again, we have some options in making some of those adjustments, and I don't consider us to be in a particularly dire situation. We're not, looking at, like some cities are looking at, tens of millions of dollars of deficits that they've got to go and cut. But I also don't want to find ourselves getting into that position. And so we made some of those operating reductions, $5 million reduced operations, this year, plus, some of the one-time savings. But we do need to make some further structural adjustments in future years to make sure we don't end up in a spot where we have to make deeper cuts. And the sooner you act, the more you can get ahead of it.
Councilmember Freeman had suggested a 5-year budget. Where do we stand in being able to look at things further out?
So we have 2 different tools. We actually have a long-range financial planning tool that just needs to be updated. And the second is our budget officer has built a 3 to 5 year projection, and it's something that is laden with assumptions, because you have to make guesses, frankly, and estimates. And so that's being refined. I would like to be able to tell council, hey, I can show you that at the May 28th meeting to think that through. I think that's too soon, but I think early in the new fiscal year we'll be able to look at our budget and say, how are we trending on revenues? How are we trending on expenses? And we do measure each of our decisions based off, not do we have the money tomorrow, but do we have the money for 5 years or 10 years, down the road. So I think early in the fiscal year, we would be able to look at a 3 and 5 year trend.
Thank you, colleagues. Anything further? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. None of this addresses the personnel, as Mr. Bashir mentioned. So at our personnel committee, there's 140 plus empty slots at this point. And none of this assumes freezing those or eliminating those at this point.
At this point, with a balanced budget, we had not proposed that. Although we have had conversations to generate additional savings just to stay farther ahead of the game. We have had internal conversations about, can we freeze positions or reduce positions? I expect to bring to the council a budget that does include some position freezes. We didn't have to do that to get to balanced, but we're discussing, from all of these conversations up to this point, wanting to achieve some additional savings ahead of next year by doing some position freezes at a minimum.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Anyone else? Mr. Clegg, anything further?
Thank you. No, nothing further.
Thank you. And so with that, we stand adjourned at 3:12. Oh, no, we have to receive and file. Sorry. Councilmember Smith.
Motion to receive and file.
We have a motion to receive and file. Would you please cast your votes? Oh, no, we don't have a quorum. So there we go. We will not receive and file.
Received.